Welcome back, Sons of Pitches. It's episode 11. We do have Isaac back for another, what we expected to be a big weekend, but we will talk about how we actually felt about this weekend. Isaac has returned because, again, Liverpool have played 2 weeks in a row, a big match in terms of the title race. They played Arsenal this weekend. So I will give you the floor again, Isaac, to start the conversation and how you felt Liverpool played, how you felt the game went, and then how you felt it means for what it means for the season.
In one word, it was shit. Yeah, that's how Liverpool played. I mean, we didn't show up. The first half, Liverpool barely were in the game. We were lucky to get the goal that we got, but besides that, I don't think that we really deserve to be in that game. I think Arsenal played well first half. I don't know if they played well the second. Like, they played okay, got a little bit lucky with both of their goals, but I think Arsenal deserved to win, but Liverpool just didn't show up. I mean, it was embarrassing. And I do think it's a little bit of we were missing Szoboszlai and Endo. I think Endo's presence we've missed his presence in the midfield since he's been at the Asian Cup of Nations, and Szoboszlai being out with an illness stunk. And I think we lost some of those midfield battles because of that. But overall, I just felt Liverpool did not deserve to win that game. It was awful.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I felt like Liverpool came out better in the second half, but that uncharacteristic mistake from Van Dijk really killed any response you guys had. And I gotta be honest with you, I think all the blame falls on Van Dijk on that one. I don't really think you could put too much on Alisson. I think he should have headed away, and Van Dijk said that pretty much bluntly in his post-game press conference. The other thing I thought that was pretty interesting from this game was the refereeing decisions were a little whack, if you ask me. If you're gonna send off Konate for a second yellow card, I think you gotta do the same for Gabriel. I really don't know what the decision was there. Something else I thought was interesting was that's Liverpool's 5th red card of the season. You guys have the most, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, some of them were really debatable, and we fought all. They were all in the beginning of the season, and one of them got taken away.
Yeah,
and then one happened the next week. Bad. Yeah, one happened the next week, and then we obviously fought that, but they can't go back on it.
Yeah. But other than that, from an Arsenal perspective, I thought, like you said, I mean, they played great. They in my opinion, kind of deserved to get 3 points. They finally tackled that Liverpool hurdle. It was kind of a similar hurdle like they were dealing with City, but they've tackled that. They've gone over it, and I think you saw that in their over exuberant celebrations. I mean, Arteta was celebrating like he won the World Cup, Champions League, and the fucking everything all at once. I mean, I don't know. I thought that was a little bit much. I don't mind it. I can see the excitement. I like to celebrate. I'm not knocking them, but I think it was a little bit too much. I don't know what you guys thought, but I thought it was a little over the top.
Yeah, for me, I mean that game was terrible. I think we were all so hyped, ready to go, and it was just full of a bunch of dog shit goals and just mistakes and everything.
Quality was awful.
Exactly. So definitely disappointing in that sense. But I will say I'll give a lot of credit to Arteta because I think they set themselves up pretty well. And I think he kind of overthought it and done a couple things weird to try to get them out of that funk. But it seemed like he got it really right with Jorginho. He played pretty well and complimented Rice pretty well as well. So, yeah, it was weird. I do think probably the just result, Arsenal probably came out better. But I think the big takeaways from this is City's probably still going to win it after seeing that. But I will say that Arsenal are going to feel that they are still alive, and this will probably be a good confidence boost for them. Let's see if they can capitalize. But Liverpool are probably looking a bit like almost invincible at one point, where they kind of went on a good run with a bunch of injuries, rotating a bunch of players, and they were still getting results. And it seemed like you can kind of quiet that down a bit, and I think they were a little bit found out. And like Isaac said, it didn't look like they showed up too much. But again, one game, so I don't want to overanalyze it, but that's just my takeaway.
Yeah, I think credit to Arsenal. They desperately, we had been talking about criticizing them, how they've kind of fallen off a bit, and a couple of players haven't performed, like Martinelli and Saka, who both ended up on the score sheet in this game, right? And then Odegaard didn't have a better game. I think he did have a better game. But it's interesting, and this kind of like leads to, I guess, a question to Isaac, is because there's only 3 changes in the lineup from the Chelsea game to the Arsenal game, which was just Gakpo in for Nunez, Gravenberg in for Szoboszlai, and then obviously Trent in for our friend Bradley. Like 3 changes, which Trent is obviously the starter over Bradley, right? So that you would expect him to have a fantastic game and be the better player, right? Gravenberg, I think, played awful, and he's been trash since he's come to Liverpool. And then Gakpo, I also didn't have a great game. Is that what you think? Like that right side, which they all played on the same side of the pitch, is that where the downfall was, or?
Yeah, I think it's definitely part of it. I think Gravenberg is like, he's okay. He's like a little bit too offensive for me to start in that midfield. And when you're facing a midfield that's like, he can start against like a Burnley or a lower sided team, but when you have a midfield that can come back at you and really do something, he's not the player I would have chosen. But obviously, because the injuries, we had to choose him. And then Trent played. He played okay. I don't think he played well. He didn't really get beat or anything like that. Like, he didn't make an error that led to a goal or have a crazy pass or anything like that. And I just think Gakpo is usually like, we try to use him like Firmino and like try to make him a false 9, and we just weren't able to get that going because of the struggling midfield and like the new midfield. So yeah, I do think the substitutions have had an impact. Every time Darwin Nunez, like, our only losses are when he doesn't start, which is ironic because when he does start, he makes you want to punch my computer sometimes. But he is a big player. Like, even if the misses and whatever you call it, he's like dangerous, and he's just in the mind of a defender because he's rapid, he's huge, and he'll shoot from anywhere. So I do think it causes some disruption to a backline that not many players can cause. But I will say, yes, those changes were huge.
Yeah, he's definitely got a lot of presence on the field, that's for sure.
Yeah.
It's actually an interesting question you asked as well, Nate, because it's the same question that Klopp himself got asked in the post-game interview. I'm not sure if you saw it, but one of the things he highlighted in the downfall of Liverpool in this game was the new triangle that he was almost kind of forced to introduce on that side, with Gakpo starting on the right. And obviously it was tough. I think Darwin Nunez has probably been Liverpool's most informed player in the absence of Salah, and I actually kind of liked Klopp bringing him off the bench. I thought it was a pretty good game plan. I mean, it's Liverpool, they're in first place. I'm sure Klopp wasn't expecting to be down in the 60th minute, and they weren't. I thought he brought him on at the right time. It just really wasn't Liverpool's night. I know we talked about Gravenberch. He was terrible. He had probably his worst performance in a Liverpool shirt, and I can't foresee him starting another game anytime soon. I thought Curtis Jones was pretty bad. But overall, I wasn't particularly impressed by Arsenal's ability to win this game. I wasn't surprised that Arsenal could win this game. They're a quality team. I think really what ended up happening was the Jorginho and Declan Rice pairing ultimately won out. I think those are 2 players that are brilliant in midfield. They know how to dictate pace, control a game. Jorginho, in my opinion, has been one of the best players in the world at that. That's the exact reason why Arsenal brought him in last season around this time when they had a lead in the title race, and they thought he was going to be the linchpin and, you know, managing those tough games against tough opponents and keeping the ball and all that. So, look, I think Arteta got the game plan right. He was right to celebrate. I also was kind of going off in the group chat because I just don't think that's the way Arteta would have liked to win the game. I think Arteta would have liked to score 3 beautiful, well-worked, quality goals. I know that's not always football, and a goal is a goal, but at the end of the day, I mean, it's a deflected parry off Alisson, who makes a great save. I know Saka missed the header in the first half, too. I think it was about 10 minutes in, so they could have been 2-0 up at halftime. They give away a shitty goal to Liverpool, and then obviously the Van Dijk mistake as a gift. And the third goal, I mean, Trossard has a great turn on Robertson, who or rather Harvey Elliott, and beats him down the line. And, you know, the ball goes in off Van Dijk through Alisson's legs. I mean, look, Liverpool are human. I think that's what they showed. I think Arsenal showed their quality. They showed that, you know, like John Lucas said, they can get over the hump. It seemed like they got over the hump last year with City, and they still didn't win the league. So I'm not particularly convinced any much more than I was before that Arsenal could kick on and win the league. It's obviously a great motivator, to beat Liverpool at home or the league leaders. But we'll see how things shake out. It was nice to see Saka score. Martinelli scored against Liverpool again. They seem to be his favorite opponent. I know he even said that in his little post-match presser as well. So we'll see what the future holds. I think Liverpool will be all right. If you had to ask me right now, I think Liverpool will finish above Arsenal regardless of this result. But we'll see what the future holds.
Forgetting that we don't have Salah right now.
Right.
We don't have
That
Salah,
too.
Thiago,
Come back.
Szoboszlai.
What do you
There's a lot
guys
of
think?
players that we're missing.
What do you guys think about Klopp? I mean, granted, one game, I don't want to crucify the guy, but to end the game with Robertson and Van Dijk as your center back pairing, and Luis Diaz playing right back, and another midfielder at left back, do you think that was probably a little bit of carelessness from them? I feel like if they kind of set that team up a little bit better, they probably could have came back because, like we said, Arsenal looked good, but they definitely looked beatable.
I just think he was kind of almost forced into that because if you look at the players he has out, like he doesn't really have the greatest options to bring on. And even like with Trent, I know we were talking about him a little bit earlier, but personally, like I didn't even think he looked like he was up to scratch. Like he didn't look fit at all to me.
He was coming off injury, right?
Yeah, I think this is his first start back. So I know
And we didn't have
Bradley. It's unfortunate that he couldn't be in the squad. Prayers up to him, but the only player that I was really impressed with on the day was McAllister, and other than that, I just thought Liverpool as a whole just did not look like their usual selves.
Yeah, I found the setup weird because I found McAllister dropping back in the sixth between the center backs to receive the ball a lot, which is not really his role. And I feel like Joe Gomez has been in ridiculous form. That's a player you don't want to sacrifice for an attacker because he's one of those players that can go fill in at center back.
Yeah,
He can fill in at right back. He can go anywhere in that back line. Throw him in midfield. So I feel like it was maybe a little bit of an oversight.
I think the McAllister thing. I think it just goes back to if you look at his midfield, if you look at the midfield three, who else is going to do that?
Yeah.
It's
not going to be Curtis Jones, and
it's not going to be Curtis Jones. And we all, after how we just fucking crucified Ryan Gravenberch, we all know he ain't going to be the one that's dropping.
It should be him,
all up
right?
Turning.
Probably.
It should be Gravenberch.
It should be him based on his size and physicality, but it's not.
In a world where
it's not.
Well. I don't know. I don't think so much the subs is what lost Liverpool the game. I think because they pulled out the three that we highlighted as probably being the worst performers, right, on the right-hand side, that triangle. Pulled out those three right before the 60th minute, and it was tied 1-1 at that point. So, and then they're still forced to play a normal, I think, lineup because they have a midfielder coming in, a forward coming in, and a fullback coming in. So I think that weird lineup you're talking about, Jay, is really the last 10 or so minutes.
Yeah, it's the right cards going into at that point.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a bit forced, but I see what you're saying. But then now looking at the table, speaking of table placement, City are poised with a game at hand to take a point lead above Liverpool if they can win that game. And they did win at the weekend as well with a 3-1 win over Brentford. And while we were just chatting before the podcast started recording, and saying that we feel City are just going to take it at this point. But at the same time, they concede early. They it's not the first time this season where in a game where they should win and then they end up winning comfortably, which is the story of it. But if you watch the game, if you just see the scoreline after, you're like, oh, City won that game 3-1, no problem against Brentford. But they went down first, and they've done that a couple times this season. So it's not all sunshines and rainbows per se. I know Foden had a great hat trick. He's still in form. Obviously, we had talked about it. Ange had highlighted it a couple weeks now that Foden is in form. But I don't know. I think there's still questions.
Just quickly, I think City defense. I've been saying it for a while. I know you guys kind of gave me shit for it, but I think City have been lacking something defensively this season. I can't quite put my finger on what it is exactly. But I don't know. To me, I know it's Guardiola. He could do what he wants, but Gvardiol shouldn't be playing left back. You should have a Joao Cancelo type player there, someone who can go forward and contribute to the team in the way that he wants them to contribute. I just think every time I watch City play, I feel like after the game, he's always coaching Gvardiol more. He's always telling him what he did wrong, and that's the only player I see him do that with. So I just think that maybe that is the issue, but for me, I've been seeing it for a while now with this City team. I think if there's a chance they don't take the title into their own hands, I think it's going to be that defensive mishaps that they've been having, and they might have it in a big game. And against a team like an Arsenal or a Liverpool, they have the quality of players that they could kill the game off, and by that point, there's no coming back. So That's my only take on City is defensively is where they're only like my only question about them really.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think there hasn't been really consistency in that back line much. And yeah, like you said, Guardiola was one of the best center backs in the world when they signed him, and now he's playing left back. So again, yeah, Pep does all these crazy tactics. He's a genius. He knows everything, whatever. But I don't see how that's beneficial. To not put, I'd probably put him as one of the best defender on that team was between him and Ruben Diaz in terms of actually defending and availability. Guy's a rock. So, I mean, I don't know why you take him out of the heart of your defense for Ake, who's actually been playing left back most of his career, which is, it's just weird to me.
I'm not totally like upset about him playing left back because especially in that City system where when they're attacking, there's like mostly just 3 back there, and he almost comes in as a wide center back role. You know what I mean? And I think Guardiola being 22, like, and being obviously in these past couple of years, like coming through the Red Bull system and then in Dynamo Zagreb as well, like he's super malleable. Do you know what I mean? He's still so young, and defenders age like wine, and they tend to gain more experience and get better over time. And I think Guardiola is trying to shape a player that he wants to keep long term. If he stays with City long term,
I see what he's doing, but for me, like my eye test of Guardiola is like this kid's a center back. He's a natural born defender. You know,
of course.
He shouldn't be.
He's
He doesn't strike me as someone who's gonna go forward and whip a dime bag cross into the box. He's gonna play a nice ball into the midfield to find De Bruyne or to find Foden. He just doesn't strike me as that type of player.
I think he's progressive, but it's an interesting. I see what you're saying.
Maybe Guardiola can bring that out of him. I'm sure if there's any coach in the world to do that, it's probably him. But I don't know. For me, I just think that there's a little bit of a question there.
I'm sure he has some plan.
There's some master plan.
That, like, we just don't see, and it's just like, and then 2 years we'll be like, oh shit, like, damn, that's what he turned him into, and like where he came. I feel like, I don't know. I just don't doubt that Pep knows what he's doing.
And the other thing, I think Guardiola has been one of their most consistent defenders too, though. Like he's been like far and out puts in 7-8 performances almost weekly. So I can't really complain, I guess.
Yeah, the only thing I'll add to that is they also rotate that back line way more than any other team I've seen. You have different center back pairings all the time with Akanji and Stones coming into that as well. And players will get dropped for seemingly no reason. And for 1 month, one defender becomes his favorite and just plays every game and can do no wrong. And then, like, it'll be like John Stones will be the best player on the pitch for a month. Then all of a sudden, he'll drop him for Ruben Diaz. Now Ruben Diaz is the best one. Like, that rotation and kind of reliance on one guy to catch form all the time is just a little odd to me. And I think it might be hindering the rest of the backline's cohesion, where they're always kind of playing a little bit different.
Yeah, Guardiola is an anomaly.
Must be nice.
He's an interesting. I know he always has the best problems. Right?
Spoiled for riches.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elsewhere in Manchester, we have a local Manchester resident, but unfortunately he's been away. But Manchester United did play 2 games since we've last conjoined together for a meeting of football intelligence. United have won back-to-back in both of those games, which is good for their season. They've obviously come on a lot of scrutiny from us and obviously from the footballing world in general. But the first of those 2 games coming against Wolves, a tight, close one, 4-3. Credit to Wolves too. I think we'll get into them after this too. I think they played pretty well, and they probably deserve to at least get a point out of this game. But good on United for winning this game. How do we feel about United's slow rise to maybe a return to greatness after these?
Call me crazy, but I think Casemiro has a little bit to do with this. I think Casemiro's just his experience and his presence in the midfield, especially being next to an 18-year-old kid like Kobbie Mainoo. I think it's just helping them be a little bit more solid and a little bit more organized.
Yeah, you just said the real reason for success. It has nothing to do with Casemiro.
Reintroducing a top 3 defensive midfielder in the world might do the trick.
I know, but everyone's been shitting on Casemiro since they got him. That he's not. Well, how did he win all these Champions League? Well, how is he this expensive? But I think there's a reason why he was in that Real Madrid for all these years. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, you don't know what you're talking about if you think that about Casemiro.
I don't think they correlate right now because I think he's a different player now.
I mean, I also
Yeah,
think
I
he
agree.
gets hate because of what jersey he's wearing at the moment. And
Yeah,
honestly,
that
I mean,
too.
United are also kind of a bit of a troll
They've
club
got the
at the
worst
moment.
fans.
So
Yeah.
I think that's
I'm
fair.
glad you brought up Casemiro returning because the other player who also returned, but now is already going to be
Yeah.
back on the surgeon's table was Lisandro Martinez. I thought he was pretty good in his 2 appearances. Obviously, it's unfortunate he couldn't play too long. But the one United player I want to bring up again is young Rasmus Højlund. He seems to have finally found a vein of form similar to the form he had last year in the Serie A with Atalanta. He was a young kid. I have a good friend from high school that I see every now and again. That's a Man United fan, and he knew I was a Serie A watcher. And he kind of asked me what my thoughts of Højlund were, and I thought it was a move too soon in his career to go to Manchester United. It's a heavy shirt to wear, especially to be, the number 9 at, the biggest club in England historically. There's a lot of weight on the kid's shoulders, and I'm glad that he's scoring again. He had goals in both the Wolves game and the West Ham game. It's 4 goals in his last 4 games now. He's scored in 4 consecutive games. He's looked good. Rashford has continued his form. And Kobe Mino, I mean, what a goal.
What a
Just
player.
not only the talent he shows, but the experience he shows. He kind of, I don't know, he kind of radiates like leadership already at such a young age. It's very uncanny to watch sometimes. He's a little more calmer than he should be. But what a goal he scored. It's unfortunate. I really like this Wolves team, who I'm sure we'll talk about next because they also played 2 games. I thought Neto and Cunha, they're their main protagonists. They've been in great form. It was nice to see Neto get his first goal back after a long time being out. Wolves were a little unlucky. I think a point was definitely fair in this game, but maybe United have the little bit of star quality that we kind of question about sometimes, to where they can pull a game out of the fire. I know Mino's goal certainly oozed class. So we'll see. Yeah, United were pretty impressive. We'll see. They have to go away to Villa next, so we'll see if they can continue the form. But I think a couple of weeks ago, United fans wouldn't have expected them to go 5 unbeaten in a row. So they're in a good place.
Yeah, and I think it's worth noting because we've been criticizing Ten Hag's decisions and how he selects lineups and how they never create the same lineup, and then there's a lack of cohesion. And he plays, besides one difference, which actually plays into his hands well, is there was only one difference in both of these lineups, which was Maguire coming in for Varane, but with Licha going out again, they can now play together and keep this lineup. And I think it's probably their best lineup. Their most informed players. Garnacho banks 2 goals in one game, with Rashford scoring in the other. Like you said, Højlund scoring in both. And then our friend Pat's favorite player, Scott McTominay, registering a decisive in both of these games, which is off the bench. But it just seems that, maybe the formula has finally been cracked a little bit for Ten Hag, and he's finally getting a consistent lineup that can perform consistently, and then we'll see how that goes into Villa.
I think Højlund and Rashford seem to have really started to form an understanding between each other too these last couple of games. Even if they don't score, it seems like they're always looking for each other when they're around the 18. So I think that's really promising for United's outlook going forward if they want to keep scoring goals.
Yeah, it's a good point. And I remember something you said to me, Gianluca, too, is that, it looks like Højlund is finally getting regular service, consistent service. And I know Nate also used the word consistency. I think that's exactly what United were lacking the first 6 months of the season. Now it seems like they finally have it in the 11s that Ten Hag is able to field. And, you're seeing it translate to the pitch. There's almost like an identity again. There's a team spirit.
They're almost having fun.
Yeah, and it's very easy to be up for games when you win away at Wolves the way they did. I wasn't particularly surprised to see them come out and smash a West Ham team who, has never really excited me anyway. But yeah, I was impressed. They've kind of stormed up the table the last couple weeks.
Yeah, for me, I mean, go ahead.
I said this is gonna come off biased because I'm wearing this shirt, but
Right.
I feel like this is the most United thing to do is go like this.
Yeah, well, they're gonna lose. They're gonna lose to Villa and Luton back-to-back games.
We're just in and up, and it's like if you look at their defense going forward now, it's Maguire and Varane. It's like we've seen how that pairing works out. So I do think you're right. I think their attack is buzzing. I remember talking to one of my friends, United fan. I was like, "Your attack is awful." and I think I've been proved wrong there. I think Garnacho's silenced the haters. I think he got a lot of hate, and then he scored that one bike that was incredible, and since then has been on fire. Hoyland's found form, but I just think like their problems have always lied
In the
in
defense.
defense.
Right.
And like it was always a classic of me of like turning on a United game, see them concede 2 goals, and then it would just be like if they can come back. And I think that pattern's absolutely going to happen again if you're starting Maguire and Varane. So I do think these were 2 good wins. I think the West Ham win was actually pretty impressive. I know Ange said he's never been excited, but like West Ham are right below them in the table. You know what I mean? Like they've been playing equal form. I think that was a big win for them, but
For sure.
I don't know. I just see them folding.
Yeah, for me, I think this is probably the point where they would have fallen. Like they wouldn't have like that inconsistent United wouldn't have won that game against Wolves, and then wouldn't follow that up with another good performance.
Right.
So I think this is a good sign to be as a United fan. You should be confident that you can turn this into something. Which Villa is a huge test. If you can get any sort of result, or even just a good performance. Even if you don't get the result, if you perform well, and they can kind of continue this lineup consistency. But yeah, I mean, that front three I think has been great. I think Garnacho on the right really helps out and allows you to have that front three of 3 good players there. But yeah, I know, I kind of crapped on you with Casemiro coming in and saying he's the key. I don't agree necessarily that he's the key, but I think that position has been a real problem, partnering Kabi Mino. So having a competent player next to him that isn't trying to dart forward like Scott McTominay and score goals is pretty much what the balance that midfield needed. Because now you can free up Bruno a bit more.
That could get the job done, and Casemiro is exactly that player.
So hopefully he can stay healthy, and 2, stay on the pitch and not get sent off. And that might be really good for them going forward. But yeah, if I'm a United fan, I am cautiously optimistic.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. Yeah, Casemiro, he just brings a bag of talent, and like you said, Jay, it's gonna be a little bit experience. Yeah, it's gonna be a little bit too of his discipline and stuff. But yeah, it frees up Mino to go because I think he wants to get forward too, and he does like Ange said, scores a worldie. But speaking, Ange already kind of started with Manchester United's first opponent. Wolves put together 2 back-to-back performances that were pretty good despite losing the first game. It was still a good performance. Then go on to beat Chelsea. That's 2 heavy hitters. Chelsea's been, we'll talk about them. They haven't been that good, but they started to pick up a little form, but still a big club, and to go to Stamford Bridge is huge as well. Cunha putting in back-to-back performances, getting a hat-trick in that game, which is insane. Jay, I know you're a closet Wolves fan. So you must be feeling pretty good. Public, okay. Proud of it. But yeah, I have to agree. I like Sarabia in this game over Bellegarde. I don't know how to say his name, but I like Sarabia. Sarabia, when he was at Sporting on that 1-season loan, was one of our best players. I think he's a player that just hasn't got a chance to shine, and I like him in this Wolves team, and I'm glad he strings some good performances together and gets some minutes. But yeah, I think Wolves played excellent in this game, and Chelsea are just awful.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves now look, in my opinion, better than the team under Nuno in their second and third season after they got promoted. Like they just look more dangerous. I think their team overall as a squad was much better back then, but they just look a more dangerous, more threatening team now. So yeah, seeing Pedro Neto come back. And I hope this guy stays healthy because he's a fantastic winger, and he's been lighting it up since he came back from injury. But yeah, I didn't think Cunha was this type of player when he was at Atletico, and I thought he was kind of just like that kind of role player, just kind of come in, give you some minutes. But he's turned the season around in his Wolves career and probably full career around here, scoring goals, creating goals. And he's been really impressive. And this again, Wolves is doing this without their top scorer in Wang Hee-chan, who's away on international duty. So I think they can make a decent run. A lot of youth, and like you said, Sarabia, he hasn't hit those levels that he was at Sporting. I don't think he's even come close. He's actually looked awful in some games. So hopefully this last few runs of games will give him the confidence to perform. and maybe he can get back to that level. But yeah, pretty good. And you got to give credit to Gary O'Neill, because this team looked like a relegation favorites under Lopetegui just 18 months ago, or even last season. So this is a really good job that he's done with this squad.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Gary O'Neill, because that was the first person I wanted to talk about off the back of these two Wolves results. I think he's further strengthened his bid to be manager of the season in the Premier League. He's certainly my pick. They've been unbelievable against some of the big opponents. They've showed no fear. They went away to Stamford Bridge, which I know isn't the scariest place to play anymore. And they played their football. Cunha showed that he has the ability to win a game. He looks a match winner. Pedro Neto has shown in the past that he's a match winner as well. They had Chelsea all over the place. Malo Gusto was awful. Cunha absolutely skins him for the penalty. I mean, I just don't know that this is a Chelsea side that not only are they playing bad, they're playing with such low levels of confidence. They're not even really doing the basics right. And it seems like all their goals are kind of scrappy. I know Thiago Silva gets a consolation back off a header. Trying to salvage anything, trying to show these young kids that he's playing with how to be professionals. I know Moises Caicedo pops up with an assist in this game, but he was terrible. I mean, he was directly at fault for one of the Cunha goals as well. He had a sloppy giveaway. He was slow on the ball. He hasn't looked anywhere near himself. And I just think a match like this really highlights the importance of identity and unison and team and buying into the right ideas, and everybody being behind the coach. The more and more bad results that Chelsea gets, the further away they're going to get in their relationships from Pochettino. He's already come under massive fire. He probably should be sacked. It's hilarious that after this many games played last season with Graham Potter, they had more points. And it really looked like last season that it was the worst that it possibly could have gotten for Chelsea. And everybody was wrong, because this Chelsea team is so bad. They've spent a ton of money. And I know we talked about in the lead up to this episode that, we were kind of laughing that how funny that now, what might send them over the top with financial fair play is them sacking Pochettino and having to pay a €10 million fee. I don't think that Pochettino is going to get them relegated. This side has just too much quality for that. They're a ways away from the relegation zone, but I mean, they're in 11th place now. It's kind of weird seeing Chelsea be in the latter half. I know they finished 12th, was it last season or the season before?
Sitting 11th now.
It's bad. It's bad,
yeah, and they have 10 losses already too. For me, it just looks like they have zero belief in themselves, zero belief in Pochettino and his ideas and his tactics. I would be really interesting to see what the trainings look like, because I could imagine they got to be fucking shocking. So
it's crazy, because I think last season these are two comparable situations, right? You had some teams like with Wolves and Chelsea, that is, like they both struggled a lot last year, and they had a little bit of investment, nothing crazy this offseason. Chelsea didn't really bring in anybody compared to their last few transfer windows. And same with Wolves. It's pretty much the same team rather. And all they did was change their manager, collect themselves, and get themselves going. And they're flying. They're now ahead of Chelsea. So and they pretty much got shafted the first 6 games of the season through VAR controversies and stuff. So Wolves realistically could be higher.
Yeah.
So for the amount spent by Chelsea, I know they're gonna have that hanging above their heads for a long time. I can't understand how a team with significantly less resources in a similar situation where they've been playing well below they have previously is able to turn around with the same players who are playing poorly, and Chelsea is just going to be 2 years straight of just crap.
Yeah, and even if you look at them in the table this season, like they're very, very similar. Like they have the same amount of wins. The Wolves have one more tie, one more point. They've conceded and scored a similar amount of goals. But like if you just watch the two teams play, like it is night and day difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a good point. And there's really no signs of it getting better. I don't know if you guys have looked at Chelsea's upcoming fixtures, but in the month of February, now they go to Villa tomorrow. They have to go to Palace. They host Man City. They host Liverpool. on February 25th in the EFL Cup. I mean, if they get wins in the FA Cup and EFL Cup, it's even more games, so they're already packed schedule. They have Newcastle and Arsenal shortly after that, the first 2 weeks of March. It's bad right now. I can honestly see it getting worse. I mean, it's not like I said, it's not like teams are even threatened at all by Chelsea. I think unless teams go into the game with the mindset of, oh, this is a defeated Chelsea and we've already won the game before it's been played, then maybe Chelsea can scrape a couple points here and there. But I mean, it's gonna be bad, I think.
Yeah. Well, that Liverpool game is the final, so like that's a final that they're in. But I think it's interesting if you look at their results. Every time they get a bad result, it seems another bad result. And when I say bad result, I mean not a win. Every time there's a draw or a loss, there seems to be one right after that. And I think that says a lot about a team that just has no mentality, that when they get kicked, they have no idea how to get
back up. Yeah, 100%. It's a great point.
That comes from the manager, that comes from the players, that comes from kind of everywhere. But if you have a team that takes a draw and is like, we're shit, or takes a loss and be like, we can't come back from this, I mean, it's embarrassing, and I don't know how you make this problem. Like, is it that you switch managers every season? I think that's a part of it. That you bring in too many players and you try to just think, oh, money will win. I think that's part of it, but I also think it's like, if you're a player in that squad and you're like, look how much they spend, like they don't give a shit about me. I'm just another whatever 50 million transfer that they'll transfer out or loan out, and it's like I wouldn't want to play for a team like that. You know what I mean? It's different when you're in City and you say you're Jeremy Doku come in, you're like, wow, you can see what they did with Grealish and you can see how they took his time and made him something. But it's, if you're a player coming into Chelsea right now, I just wouldn't be motivated to work for, like, if they're paying you a shit ton. It's almost like playing Saudi Arabia. It's like we're paying you a shit ton of money, but like we don't really care about you. We just like kind of want your name, and we're gonna see how you fit into this team that like isn't really a team. It's kind of just money thrown at soccer, and that doesn't always work, which is nice to see that it doesn't always work.
It doesn't work, yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because just out of curiosity, I've kind of been clicking through all these Chelsea players and seeing how long they've been tenured at the club. I think their longest tenured player right now is Reece James, who obviously feels like he's not even a Chelsea player with the amount of times he's visiting the physio's office. The majority of the starting 11 hasn't been at Chelsea longer than 18 months.
Yeah,
and I think that says a lot. And I'm not sure, where are the roots of this Chelsea club? You look at the other top 6 teams, they have players that were born and bred Arsenal fans and Saka and Manchester United fans and Rashford. You have your Scousers in Liverpool who, even if they're not the best players, they know exactly what it means to be a Liverpool player. And it shows on the pitch. It shows in their desire. It shows in these big games, the way they attack them, mentality, like your drive to win 50-50 balls. You're not as sloppy. Like, I'm sure when Curtis Jones makes a mistake, it hurts him a lot deeper than when Caicedo gives a ball away for Chelsea. And it's just not something that I see get talked about at all. I mean, Thiago Silva obviously is, in my opinion, one of the best defenders to play the game, but he's out there almost with 10 planks of wood sometimes. And it's just sad. It's just sad.
He's also like 39 years old.
Yeah, dude, it's terrible. I mean, you're looking to somebody like Conor Gallagher to be the leader. It's just embarrassing, to be honest.
To me, I was always shocked at how they like treated Raheem Sterling. I felt like
I know.
He was never given the role that like I thought he would get at Chelsea. I thought like Chelsea would treat him like, oh, this is our guy. This is a guy who's proven himself at Liverpool, at City. And you can say what you will about Sterling. I just, if I'm a Chelsea fan, I just felt like, oh, Raheem Sterling is coming in. Like I would almost look to him to be the leader. And like, yes, Thiago Silva is always going to be the captain. Correct. Like, yes, but it's also like you don't have to have just one leader. I just feel like Raheem Sterling has, maybe it's him, maybe it's Chelsea, but like on either side, Sterling hasn't stepped up or Chelsea haven't allowed him to step up and be like the leader that he is. He knows how to win. He was on City. Like I wish that I thought he would have way more of an impact than he did, and he's just kind of hung out.
Like this team has
done anything.
This team is full of winners. Like you have Sterling that's won the league multiple times. You have Cole Palmer just won a treble. Granted, he didn't really do much there, but he's been around that. Thiago Silva, like you said, has won Champions leagues. Like, he's been one of the best players ever. You have Enzo won a World Cup. Like, there's real winners in this team, and they still there's no leadership. There's no direction. I don't know how nobody is able to kind of like get together and be like, let's just get our shit together and get some momentum going. But it's just problem after problem with them.
You know, it's funny. I like what Isaac and Andrew saying and kind of what Jay was getting at in terms of like identity and everything and leadership. Because I mean, Chelsea's of old, right? Mourinho's Chelsea. Like you had players like Lamps, you had players like John Terry in that era of Chelsea where they were like winning premierships, won a UCL. Then even most recently, the Chelsea with Conte and that team that also lifts a UCL trophy. You know, there's an identity. There's a player that stands out. There's like a tactical style, and there's just none of that. There's not one player in this Chelsea team that like you look at. I know we mentioned Thiago Silva as a leader, but in terms of like someone where you're like, wow, I can't wait to see him play this weekend. There's not a player on Chelsea that I really say that to. At one point, I would have said that maybe about Cole Palmer and Gallagher. You know, like the like English youth coming up through other clubs. But it's like Chelsea are getting scraps or like buying names, and then they come here and there's just nothing. Yeah. There's nothing to be excited about. It's embarrassing.
And real quick, one more piece on this with the leader part. Like, they've always had a true leader on this team all the time, a real captain. Yeah. You had Czech, you had John Terry, you had Lampard, even Gary Cahill. We can say whatever we want about him. He's a good leader for that team.
Right.
And now you have who I think is probably one of the better captains that have played the game in Thiago Silva. And he's like
not captain.
He's like the fourth one. Like, what are you doing? Like, Reece James can't stay in the field. That's not a leader. That's not a captain. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Same thing with Chilwell. Ange mentioned it last week. He just has embarrassing performances.
Yeah.
Like, I don't get it. Like, how are you going to make Conor Gallagher, who doesn't – this is too high of a level for him, in my opinion, a captain on this team? Like, it's embarrassing. There's no true leadership on here. It's I don't know. It's just not. Yeah, Chelsea, we can laugh about Chelsea only being, like, good in the last 20 years, whatever. But they've been fantastic. They've cemented themselves as –
They've had levels, yeah.
Right. And this is embarrassing.
Yeah. I agree with what you're saying. Like, how the hell are they captaining Ben Chilwell, who's only known for his career at Leicester? Like, yeah, he's been on Chelsea, but he's done fuck all at Chelsea. Mm-hmm. I just don't know why you don't captain Silva. I think you're absolutely right with that. And also, like, I do think that their attack is protected by the fact that it's mostly English. I mean, Gallagher hasn't scored in the Premier League. Nobody talks about that. He said played 22 games, he hasn't scored. Like, that's dog shit.
And he's a 50 million pound footballer too.
Yeah.
That's dog shit. And if he's not English, I feel like that gets talked about a little bit more.
Yeah.
He'll be in the England squad.
Oh, probably.
Yeah.
That's another conversation.
I can't. Yeah, we'll have a whole episode about the England squad picks when it comes to Euro this summer. I guarantee it. A couple other great big games that happened in terms of the score lines and results. Luton continuing some good form. I'm really happy that they look like they might stay up. But the game at hand, they could poise themselves a good 4 or 4 points away from the relegation zone if they win. It had a 4-4 duking out with Newcastle United in Newcastle, where they held the lead twice. They held the lead, I think, in that game.
They were up like 4-2, I think it was in the second half.
Yeah. And then of course performances from people that we've been highlighting. Adebayo, another goal. Ross Barkley,
all out.
Yeah, just
all about.
Continued to be what we said. He's the player that they brought in to play Premier League level football, and that's exactly what's going on. I think Luton are just fun. I actually think it's really fun. I know like they were like getting trolled that they were going to go straight back down and all that stuff. But I don't know. I think it's been pretty exciting this season so far with Luton. I don't know if anybody else had a couple thoughts on that game.
I got a question actually about Ross Barkley for you guys. Now me and Angelo watched the Ajax PSV game over the weekend as well, and another English midfielder, Jordan Henderson, made his debut for Ajax. And what did you know? His little daddy-o, Gareth Southgate, was in the stands to watch his debut. Now, why the fuck is this motherfucker going all the way to Holland to see this guy who hasn't play when you have Ross Barkley balling out, playing the football of his life in the last couple months, literally in your backyard? What are we doing here, Gareth? Like, come on, bro.
But Southgate's an idiot.
Dude,
Yeah.
like, what the fuck?
We're gonna
Like,
have to have
he's
a
gonna go pick
conversation
Calvin
on
Phillips, who's been
Southgate.
absolutely shit for West Ham in the first 2 games he's played so far. He looks so far off of it, and Jordan Henderson, who's probably even further off of it. So it's crazy. I mean, Luton, I thought they were fucking fantastic in this game. I mean, I know we all had them going down, but I think you might have hit the nail right on the head, Nate. I think they might stay up. I mean, they got every reason. They have all the momentum. I think Robert Edwards is actually a good coach, dude. I think he might actually really know what he's doing. I thought his tactics for this game were spot on. Dan Burn got the runaround down that left side, and I think that's all. I think Edwards really knew to attack that side. He knew that Luton had the pace to beat them down there, and they got the job done, and they got the result, and it's another big one for them. Obviously, like you said, they have a game in hand. They've overtaken Everton now, so they're out of the relegation zone. So, I mean, things are looking only up for Luton right now.
Yeah, and if you look
Yeah,
at
I
their
think it helps
fixtures,
that.
go ahead.
I think it helps that Nottingham Forest is like drop points in the last 4 matches, and Luton have stayed on form. And I mentioned it last week. I was like, oh, it's a hard place to go. And in my head, I was like, yeah, like Luton will only win games at home, but they went to St. James's Park, which, say what you will about Newcastle fans and their takeover, but that place has been a hard place to go, no matter how much money
absolutely
was invested in the club. Like, that is not an easy place to go and put up 4. So I think that's an incredible performance from them, and they kind of have this, like, there's always that one team in the Prem usually where it's like they just ride this momentum of like, yeah, it's our first year, like, fuck it. And I think like Luton's starting to get some of that energy, and it's always it makes it always so fun to watch them. I agree.
They really do have fucking energy. They play with zero fear at all.
Yeah.
No matter who they play
I mean,
against.
4-4 is a sick game.
Yeah.
Like,
At St. James's too.
And I
That is not
believe,
an easy place to go.
I believe they should have won that game. I almost think it's unjust to only come away with a point. I think they were the better side completely. But I'm glad you talked about Nottingham Forest, because I want to look at the upcoming games for Luton so we can kind of try to predict a little bit how their season might go, because they do play Sheffield United, who sit rock bottom and have been awful. So that should be a good way to continue their momentum if they're smart and play well that game. But then, of course, they have 3 tough games in United, Liverpool, and Villa. 2 of those games are at home. We have talked about going to Kenilworth Road being difficult. So they need to try to hold that momentum. And I think if they can survive those 3 games and pull out maybe 2 points, get 2 draws out of 2 of those teams, I think then going to Crystal Palace and then hosting Nottingham Forest, especially if Nottingham Forest continue their downward spiral, it'll be good for them to get closer and closer to the end of the season. It's just all going to be how they handle that 3 games.
They have a tough schedule. I mean, it's Sheffield, who are shit. They have United, Liverpool, Villa, and then Palace and Nottingham Forest, and then after that, it's Tottenham and Arsenal.
Yeah, so
that's not very. They played 5 of the big 6 teams in the next few weeks.
It's a tough schedule, but I think the beauty is that they're hitting their form at the right time. You know, it's barring this upcoming result against Sheffield, it seems like they're going to go into that run of games with the highest confidence the squad's ever had, and it's nice to see that Luton are no longer this like joke of a fixture where everybody thought they were going to lose every game 5-0. It's actually Sheffield that's losing games 5-0. They just did this weekend. But back to Luton, it's back-to-back games with 4 goals scored, which is kind of crazy. I mean, you look at some of the names on paper, and they play a similar style to Wolves, and similar to Wolves as well. It's kind of what we talked about with what Gary O'Neill has there, and it's definitely what Rob Edwards has at Luton. It's that belief. It's that trust in the manager. It's the trust in the game plan that no matter what happens, we're going to stick to the plan. And boy, do they stick to the plan well, because, they've been rolling. They're beating the teams that are on their level, which is good. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think the goal scored is a good point, too, because if you look at their goals for and against, they've scored a lot more than all the other teams around them in that relegation scrap.
Right.
So if anything's going to keep them up, it's definitely that potent attack of theirs.
Right.
Yeah, I made a point earlier. If United's defense is gonna catch up to them, I just watch out for Luton at home against against
a very tricky one.
Yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning too, because the 3 games that are coming up, the United, Liverpool, and Villa games, I think especially more so United and Villa. Maybe I'm saying that because Isaac's here, but United and Villa are known to dip off, a little bit. Even especially like Villa has been dipping off. United are known to just play crap in some games despite having good form. And then Liverpool obviously had a woeful game that we already talked about against Arsenal. So I think it's not going to play a City who will probably crush you pretty hard. I think it's 3 potential teams that if they can catch him off guard, they can still snag a point or two.
Sure.
And you know what I mean in that little run of fixtures. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
gonna be interesting to see how that plans out.
Real quick on Newcastle before we move on. It's still pretty impressive what they're doing because the state of that squad right now is awful. Like they've got 6 guys out who they would like to say would start, and they're still able to. I mean, granted, Luton, you got to expect the win. I mean, the way the fans are going to be is they're going to freak out and say this was awful. But I mean, Luton, we've been watching. They've been doing pretty well. They're on a good run of form. So the result isn't too bad. But to get 4 goals out of the squad, to get 2 out of Longstaff is pretty crazy and pretty impressive. So yeah, I know they've been struggling and kind of going through a little rough patch recently, Newcastle. But I think it's still pretty impressive that they've been able to kind of still hang around where they are, considering all the injuries and suspensions and stuff they've had.
Yeah, they almost have this like aura, but it's like an aura of money. Like they just know that they're like back.
Loaded.
And so it's like a team that's like, oh well, like we will probably end up being good in the next 5 years, and I think that's given the fans like an all new belief for it. Like it's kind of a gross aura, but it is like a belief among the club.
Right.
So I think the club is they're one of the bigger clubs in the country. What they want to say or not, like they probably honestly bigger than Spurs. Like they're huge, but I definitely think this money and the recent success last season has definitely gotten to some fans' heads because they're now expecting Champions League places every year, and they should be signing Neymar and Mbappe. So I definitely think they need to pump the brakes because they've been doing it right so far. They've made good signings.
I agree.
They've brought in great players like players like Isak and stuff like that, and Tonali. Even though we don't even know if that guy's ever going to play again, it's going to take time, and I think it's still pretty impressive the job Eddie Howe's doing considering all the adversity they've had to face.
Yeah, it's worth remembering Newcastle have history too. It's not it's not a buyout like absolutely. A Chelsea or something that's growing out of nowhere back in the day. But like Newcastle have been around.
Right.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I was just saying that like when you have more money than City all of a sudden, I feel like your expectations are ridiculous. I don't know why. Like it's almost interesting to me how they like haven't recklessly bought players.
I think that's the best part.
They didn't buy anybody.
I actually think they're not doing that.
Window.
I think they're not doing that because they're terrified of financial fair play. Because, I mean, we've seen Everton get a points deduction. There's rumors of Nottingham Forest getting one now. So I think, personally, I think they're fucking shit. And I think all the Premier League clubs are shitting their pants. And I think that's why we saw such a shitty transfer window. I mean, I don't even think they spent $100 million altogether in the Premier League. And last year, they spent like almost $1 billion. Yeah, so I think everybody's just shitting their pants a little bit with financial fair play right now.
Almost like we should punish the team. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Todd Bowley's time at Chelsea has probably been eye opening to a lot of these owners and managements. Like, say, you can't just come in here and spend money, throw it down on the table, and say, "Here we go, buy me the league." It ain't happening.
Right.
Like, you have to be thoughtful. I think United is a good case study on this too. They just go and spend $100 million on players that don't deserve it. And when you look at their squad right now, who are their best players? It's players they've developed in Garnacho, Rashford, Mainu. Like, those are the players they're relying on, and they cost nothing. Yeah. So, like, you have to balance it out, and kind of see that spending money isn't going to do it. You just have to bring in players that can grow and can adapt and create the system for it. And I do think Newcastle has definitely done it the right way.
They certainly have a system for bringing up youth too. Like look at a lot of those guys are Newcastle born and bred players. Look at Lewis Miley, 17 years old. He's made a name for himself in this team now. He's pretty much one of the first names on the team sheet now. So I think Newcastle definitely have the facilities to get it done.
Yeah, I think also you hit a good point about the financial fair play thing coming in really hard this season. So some clubs being worried, but I think because they spent so little this January, it's going to help balance the books, and this summer is probably going to go a bit crazy.
Well, they still supposedly they have to sell. That's why there's been so many rumors of Almiron going for $30 million or Guimaraes being sold. I think they're going to have to sell a big player. Even Isak could be sold. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there.
Yeah, because part of financial fair play is you need to make money. So you
Yeah, they
can
could
spend
balance
all
the
you
book.
want, but if you're not making it, then you're screwed. So they need to get into bigger sponsorships, big player sales before
Right.
this can actually take off.
Or they need to get in the right people's pockets.
Yeah.
That too.
Well,
Like
Yeah.
Todd Bowley.
hopefully that's
and
over.
then you can
but
start
I have
running.
no-
Hopefully, yeah, it is kind of nice to you see like a team that has a shit ton of money, but like do it right. If that
Right.
makes sense, like
Yep.
it's a little bit refreshing.
Even like who would have thought Eddie Howe would still be there at this point in time when the Saudi takeover first happened? So
Yeah, and it's funny you say about getting people's pockets because then you can start running a tab of like 100 plus charges or whatever it might be.
Yeah, but nothing will happen to them,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, we'll see. I'm holding out hope that might happen, but that's a topic
yeah.
for another day.
2 high
I
scoring
think Liverpool
Newcastle
should be
games.
awarded 3 league titles. I think that's just fair.
You might just get it. We'll see. Newcastle did have 2 back-to-back games where they scored 3 plus. The first game being against Aston Villa, we talk about had a great weekend real quick where they scored the 5. I know Ange had briefly mentioned that smacking around Sheffield, but I mean Sheffield.
yeah, 5 different goal scorers. I thought Tielemans' goal was the pick of the bunch. What a banger! Vintage classic Thierry Tielemans goal in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, Villa needed a result like that, and obviously it's against Sheffield, which I mean everybody should be going to play Sheffield and expecting a smashing because they're just so poor.
Well, they dropped points to Sheffield last time they played them at home.
Yeah. So
Yeah, they tied.
right, so
Took a last minute goal from Zaniolo, I think it was, in stoppage time. He scored to level the game. So.
Oh right. Another club that I'm a fan of too. Brighton had a good weekend, 4-1 against Crystal Palace.
Great bounce back.
Yeah,
All that crap we talked for nothing.
I think
What are they doing?
the only thing really to say about this game is I think if Pochettino's days aren't numbered, Roy Hodgson's days are most definitely numbered at this point. I mean, I think he wants to get fired. I mean, I don't know what's going on. The Elise situation too was so strange. I mean, he wasn't fit enough to start, so they didn't start him. They brought him on at halftime, and the first time he tried to run, they took him right off. For it seemed like the same injury, hamstring. So I don't know. It was interesting to me that after the game, Hodgson said if he gets sacked, he's bringing his medical team with him. I think he's kind of sending shots out there at Elise. So who knows what that's all about? But yeah, I think Hodgson's got to go. I mean, the guy's 76 years old. I think is a little past it now.
It sucks it's going to end this way, but yeah, I mean,
For a legend.
Palace really needs to be on relegation watch because I don't see them having any success if they don't have Eze and Elise out there 90 minutes a game together because they literally are that team. So if they're going to be having some injury troubles and availability issues, then yeah, that's definitely got to be a worry for Palace because all the teams below them, with the exception of probably Sheffield and maybe Burnley, are playing decent and have a chance to get to pass them.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, and
That's
honestly,
such a big loss.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point, Jay, because they sit 14th, right, which sounds comfortable away from relegation, but they're actually only 5 points above Everton, and with like Luton climbing, Brentford every now and then getting some points.
Luton's got a game at hand. If they win that, they're a point below them.
Right, Brentford and Luton both have a game at hand, and both of those points, those 3 points, like you said, put them right either next to them or actually Brentford will break above them, so it's tough. But yeah, Pascal Gross with another great performance. That he is key to their team. And the last big game of the weekend in the Premier League, where we had Tottenham, who
they drew at Everton too.
Everton. Yeah,
Richarlison had a brace against his former employers, and I just got to say, I felt for him a little bit. You know, I've always been a Richarlison supporter. I know he's gone through a bit of an issue with his mental state. That's nothing to knock against him, but it's something we all go through, and I respect him for being able to come out of it and turn his form around, and I just felt so bad for him because he just looked like he did not want to be the person to score the goals that were the ones to get a result for Tottenham, especially that second one. I mean, he looked like he just wanted to hide and get as far away from the field as possible.
Yeah, it's interesting. Tottenham have managed to survive this period, and obviously with the Asia Cup coming to a almost conclusion, they will be getting their talisman back in Heung-min Son. They have
some big AFCON players returning as well.
Yeah, right.
Bissouma and Sarr.
Yeah, and they've strung together a couple of decent performances in that time without those players, so they've survived, and now they have Brighton, Wolves, Chelsea, and Villa coming up in the next couple of games. So it's games that they should expect to win, but they're going to need all their full force coming back. Speaking of the Asian Cup, it's coming close, and there's been a couple surprises. We haven't talked about it too much week in, week out. It's not something we followed too hard, but just from a paper point of view, why Heung-min Son's coming back is because South Korea got knocked out by Jordan, who were on an absolute dream run
in the final for the first time in their history of the Asian Cup.
Yeah,
so big ups to them. Taking down a giant like South Korea, I think they probably would have been the favorites coming into the tournament. And I watched the game because it was just something on Paramount Plus, and it was something I felt like watching today. So I watched it, and I was actually thoroughly impressed. I thought Jordan was far the better side. They played South Korea off the pitch. South Korea have probably been lucky to get this far, in my opinion. They've been pretty much outplayed or outclassed in every game. It's taken them a couple late equalizers to stay alive and to keep it going this far, and their luck has pretty much run out, and they didn't really even show up for the game. Actually, funny, I didn't know this, but Jurgen Klinsmann was their coach, so who knows where he goes. He might get the sack. I'm sure they're all disappointed in South Korea with this result, not coming away with the win and at least making the final. So we'll see what happens there.
Yeah, it's like if you were to look at the lineups of the teams, you would have picked South Korea to be a favorite. It's a little shocking how bad they played. Like you said, like they didn't make it this far, but they scraped their way there. Just on their attack alone, I mean, if you have Heung-min Son and you have Hwang Hee-chan and you have Kang In-lee, I feel like you should just be better than you are.
They should have been wiping the floor with everybody.
Yeah, the best attack in the tournament.
Yeah.
By far and away the best attack.
It's interesting because I think in years past you would probably paint South Korea as like a Heung-min Son only, but I think coming into this tournament, like we were just saying, they also had some quality players.
They have a defender now in Kim Min-jae who was suspended for the game today, and I think that had a massive impact. I think he had too many yellow cards, so he had to miss the game, and I think that was a huge miss for them. They looked so unstable defensively.
Right, it's just interesting, and but another couple stories in this: Iran, whose talisman is Taremi, plays for Port, had to go without him because he did get a red card when they won against Syria, and they managed to knock out Japan, who are another good team that I think also had the caliber of winning this tournament, and they managed to win 2-1 against them. Japan had a goal through Morita, a Sporting player who did the Gyokere celebration, which was funny to see. But yeah, Iran are another team that I think they'll be able to cruise past Qatar, and I think the Jordan-Iran final is actually going to be kind of interesting. Not something I would have expected at the beginning of this tournament, but
I disagree. I think Qatar will get
would have write Qatar off, to be honest. They've been playing great. They have the top scorer and probably the best player in the tournament so far in Akram Afif. So I think it'll be a great game regardless. I think it's definitely tougher to call. I think looking on paper at the South Korea Jordan game going into it, I think everybody would have picked South Korea to win, but I think this one's definitely tougher to call.
Yeah, I think with Qatar, I mean, a little interesting, with all the stupid money they have. When they were awarded the World Cup and all that stuff, they actually invested heavily in soccer around the country and getting teams better and getting coaches over, referees over. So the next batch of players have been getting coached from managers like Xavi, a lot of big managers. So they've been developed fairly well. So I think they're tough to write off. Granted, they don't necessarily have the talent, but they've been playing at a decent level and getting coached at a decent level for most of their careers, and they're hosting. I don't know how much of an advantage that is, but
yeah,
I'm not sure they have many fans. But
I don't know if anybody actually has this information, but if you look at the Qatar team, there's a couple of players who, based on their name, they're not Qatari. It's
they're like Portuguese, Brazilian.
This kid's name is Lucas Mins, and then Pedro Miguel, dude. These are not Qatari players. So that's an interesting thing. But I don't know. I guess I have faith in Iran. I've seen them play a couple times. I think they're a solid team, and I think Taremi, as much as I don't like Porto, and as much as sometimes I really don't like Taremi either, I know he's a good player, and I know he's the kind of player that can get results. But
hey, we can't do this. We can't support a Portuguese state. We can't do it.
I know it's tough.
Someone outside the Portuguese league, I will say Taremi is a class player.
Yeah.
Someone who's been linked with coming over to Serie A, so it'd be cool to see him make the jump.
When speaking of Serie A, I'm glad actually you said that. We'll just go ahead because that wraps up the Premier League, mentioning the Asian Cup. So I'll give it over to my Italianos, Ange and G, to run us through the weekend.
Yes, sir.
I know I know Inter had a good game, and I know Ange might have already conceded the league to them, but I'll let you go ahead and give me your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, we might as well start with the showpiece match in the boot-shaped country. It was the Derby d'Italia, always a festive game, festive week leading up to the game. There was a lot of hate between the Inter ultras and the Juventus ultras, some not so pleasant signs that could be read from the stands watching on the broadcast, but it was honestly one of the more boring games I've watched this season. 2-3 at the back teams who set up to win without any nonsense defending. I think Inter really showed their gap in quality this game. They showed why they're first place. This Juventus team just isn't quite there yet. I know they've gone a bunch of games unbeaten, pretty much matching Inter's form. But on the night, Inter just showed a couple of the players in this team are just ooze class. I think Çalhanoğlu cemented himself as the best player or best midfielder in the country this year. I think he's been one of the best midfielders in Europe. Personally, I've watched a number of Inter's games. He's been unbelievable. He was someone who, in my opinion, if you knew anything about football at all and you watched him in a Milan shirt, the games where he was consistent and played up to his ability, he showed every thing you want from a world-class center midfielder: his passing range, his reading of the game. Some of the attacks that he was able to spring forward from into this game were unbelievable. I know that pass was doing the rounds on social media. It was an unbelievable ball, and it's honestly not the first time I've seen
he does that shit every game.
On pick a pass like that. Yeah, he really is an unbelievable player. Right foot, left foot. It's the same world-class ability. Inter were great. Juventus had one chance in the game, and Vlahovic brought out his best pair of Timberlands because he looked like he was trying to control the football with a brick. It was a great counterattack, a golden chance. I remember when the ball got played in, I thought, wow, this is it. Juventus is gonna be the typical Juventus nick a goal against the run of play. It's gonna be a 1-0 Juventus. But in reality, Inter kind of gave Juventus a dose of their own medicine. That's how I thought the game played out. What did you think, Gianluca?
Yeah, actually, I wrote that in my notes at post game. I said Inzaghi beat Allegri at his own game. That's exactly how I felt. It was a classic, score the first goal and sit back and defend and be solid. But I don't think you can put that on Inter. I think that they actually were better in every facet of the game, defensively, in the midfield, in attacking. I think Szczesny is really the reason why it stayed 1-0. He made a couple really impressive saves towards the end. Otherwise, it would have been
he had an unreal save. That's right.
Yeah, the second one he had was absolutely fucking unbelievable. I don't even know how. I don't think he knows how he got to that ball. But regardless, it just, like you said, Ange, it just showed the gulf in class between these two teams, and really the gulf in class between Inter and the rest of the Serie A this season. They've been by far and away the best team, and I just think it's funny. Juventus's only losses this season have come from 2 Federico Gatti own goals, which is just hilarious. So, but other than that, I really don't have too much to add. Like you said, I thought Inter were far better, and really it's their title to lose now at this point.
Yeah, actually, that's kind of why I wanted to ask the question. So Inter, if you look at the table, obviously 4 points clear of Juventus with a game at hand, so they could put that up to 7 points, and then that's still another 11 points ahead of Milan. Do Inter get to pull the foot off the gas a little bit in the league and maybe look at the Champions League? Because obviously they're still in contention to do that. Do they have any hope of getting a double this season? What do you think about their quality in terms of how that goes?
I think they're actually not really going to be affected by the Champions League at all, because if you look at their squad, they have the far and away deepest squad in Serie A, and Inzaghi's system is so well refined to this point now where he can really just plug and play with these players. He can take out Di Marco, who's probably been one of, if not the best left wing backs besides Grimaldo in Europe this season. He can take him out, throw Carlos Augusto in for a game, and he does fine. Same thing with Dumfries on the opposite side. We've seen Darmian fill in there, as well as at center back. So I just think it's really it's all down to Inzaghi and his system and the depth of the squad. They're going to have no problems. I think they have every reason to go on and win the title from this point. I wrote, like I said, I took a bit of notes before and after the game because it's just the amount of importance here. But I wrote down title decider ? Because I really felt like if Inter went and won this game, they have every reason to go and win the title, and I think that this performance showed that they're gonna go and do that.
Yeah, it's done. I don't want to deploy some black magic here, but if Inter didn't lose this game, I honestly don't foresee them losing a game the rest of the season. I know Juventus's mantra is fino alla fine, which means until the end. I think it was the end of the Serie A race this season, which kind of brings me into Saturday's match that Milan played. I was pretty pleased with Milan to get a win this weekend in the lead up to the Derby d'Italia, because I know I texted the group chat right away saying Milan's in the title race. I think we were in the title race for about 12 hours, I'm going to be honest. But that kind of hung on the fact that I was hoping for Inter and Juventus to draw, and then I thought Milan actually would have had a realistic outside chance of challenging for the Scudetto. But I think it's over. It's going to suck in May to see Inter don the second star on the front of their kit before Milan get to, I know the famous race in Italy right now is the 19 Scudetti to 19 Scudetti between the two Milan clubs. It looks like it's going to be Inter that gets their second star this season. For those who don't know, in the Serie A, once you get 10 Scudetto, you get to wear a star above your badge. That's why Milan has that iconic star above theirs, and Juventus play with 3 since they have over 30. Inter have been unbelievable. But I thought Milan were good. It was a typical performance. Jovic came off the bench and scored. Giroud was a protagonist again, goal and assist. He looked pretty good. So we'll see. It's good for Milan, but pretty much like I've been saying the last couple of weeks, I'm kind of just waiting for Europa League at this point. If we want to talk about some off-field stuff, it seems like this is the first real week where the Leao departure rumors are kind of gathering steam. I know this might come up when we transition to La Liga, but it seems like Mbappe's imminent free transfer that was supposed to happen the last 3 summers is going to finally happen. And it looks like Leao is the top of the list of candidates to take his place. He's been posting some cryptic stuff on social media. A lot of Milan fans think that he's not the type of character to be leading such an iconic club like Milan, which I think is unfair. You know, they think that he's a little too focused on fashion, a little too focused on his rap career, which I think is harsh. I think he's a young kid. I think he's been nothing but a role model personally. We'll see. I think we're going to have a long episode the week that he leaves, because I could probably write a book about what he has meant to me and the symbol that he is for this current Milan. But we'll cross that bridge when it happens.
I do have 2 questions for you, Ange, actually. The first one, we'll just go with the Leao question. I kind of lost it. It wouldn't be too surprising if Leao go to Paris, because, like you said, his whole fashion.
It just sucks. I thought he would stay. You know, Milan, the fashion capital of the world. He's
right.
He's a young kid with a lot of confidence.
But Paris has a little bit of a fashion scene on their own. But do you think maybe Milan can attract him to stay if they, manage maybe to get a hands on some silverware or something like that you were saying, focusing on the Europa League? Do you think that's something that's in question for him, that he wants to win more? Or, I don't know. Not that
I think he just wants to take the next step in terms of leagues.
Yeah,
I think no chance. I'm going to be honest. I think regardless of what happens, I think Leao was especially offended by the sacking of Paolo Maldini and the retirement of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. I remember bookmarking his tweet. He had a cryptic emoji posted mere minutes after Maldini was shown the door. I think ever since then, that was kind of the change in attitude that some of the Milan fans like to highlight in Leao's performances, which is a shame. I think he's a player that honestly has the ability to win a Ballon d'Or. I really do believe that when his head is in it, and I think he knows that as well. And I think if he goes and makes a move to the Premier League, for example, and can add a Champions League or a Premier League trophy to his trophy cabinet, he's going to be considered, I think, as one of the better wingers ever to play the game. I truly believe that he has that ability, this blistering pace, some of the goals that he's been able to score. He had a wonderful assist. He's a great crosser of the ball, underrated ability that he possesses. So it almost sometimes feels like he's outgrown this current version of Milan. I think with the sale of Tonali, that kind of spelt the beginning of the end for the Scudetto winning team. it's just sad because I think he was a pillar. I think he was someone that I thought was going to be a pillar of Milan for the next decade. Somebody that I thought would have spent his career at Milan, especially after winning the league and being given the number 10 shirt. I mean, we know how much the number 10 shirt holds in value, regardless of what football club you wear it for. And it's just sad. I hope he stays, but we'll see. I'm going to try to enjoy him.
Why do you think that's a reoccurring theme? Like you said, the Scudetto winning side, like Tonali left
I know.
and Leao left. Like, why do you think that is? Because I feel like Milan's a big enough club for these players to stay, and especially if you're winning the league, it just feels like there's another factor to it, and it's got to suck as a Milan fan if you lose these great players. Because it's like we're a great team. It's not like we're shit and we're losing these great teams. It's not like this is how we set up our club. It's not like a Ajax where it's like, yeah, they get good and then they go somewhere else. It just, I'm curious as to like what you think that kind of means.
Well, I just think the times have changed. The Serie A has changed. I think the Serie A is no longer the level of league that it was. And you're right. I mean, Milan was the type of club that you played football to end up playing for a club like Milan.
Yeah.
You know, Milan wasn't a stepping stone for world-class talent. It's where finished articles went to play.
Yeah, that was the goal.
Yeah, and we're not that anymore. And you saw it with someone like Donnarumma, who I know he wasn't born in Milan. He's a Neapolitan himself, but he was somebody who was, a boyhood Milan youth player. He made his debut when he was 16, and he left before the job was even done. I mean, he, went for a free Donnarumma. They were throwing fake dollars in the stands, and I mean, even someone like Kessie. I mean, I love Kessie. I actually have no problem with him because he was someone who stayed and got the job done. He saw out a Scudetto win. He was an integral part of it. And I think when Zlatan came back, he kind of brought back that old vintage Milan feeling of a club that you really wanted to go to. I think that's kind of why he's kind of been introduced again. I feel like the ownership realized that they kind of needed a Maldini figure. I think Ibrahimovic is going to go on to be this new Maldini character. But I think, to answer your question, the reason why I think players are leaving is just because the Serie A is just not a desirable league to be in anymore.
Yeah.
They had that whole scheme and pitch about the Serie A is back last season, and then they lost all 3 European finals. So I think, I don't know. There's a lot less money in the Serie A, and it's no longer the desired league. I feel like players would rather go play for Madrid, Barcelona, even probably PSG for the money. So it's too bad.
I think the teams clubs across the league are probably coming into a lot of financial troubles because I mean the way you guys set yourselves up with a lot of city rivals sharing stadiums that are now falling into decay. Like now you guys got to either work together to rebuild it or go get one on your own. The only ones building new stadiums are Atalanta and Juve recently. So I mean,
even when you look at the teams, if you look at the teams that win the league, these teams win the league, and then the next season they can't even afford to improve their squad at all. Right, and that just goes to show there's no money across the board in the whole league.
Yeah. You got to find some sort of solution.
It's not just a Milan problem.
No, it's a Serie A problem.
Your question.
Yeah, and
I think you guys got to take a page out of Portugal's book and start developing some of your own talents.
Yeah, I mean, I had my own 2 cents for that question because I think, and I know Anne just said it before, and we've mentioned it before. I think Milan had a project to return to that glory of having players like Kaká and like Rui Costas and stuff. And I think, and like you said, Anne, just before, they did it too early. They won the league too early, and now those players, like you said, that were part of that project and were growing with the club, achieved what they have to achieve, and now they're like, all right, now what's my next step? You know what I mean? And now you can't continue a project when players are no longer motivated for a goal because they've already achieved it. My follow-up question before you guys move to the next game was, it's just a quick one, Ange, for you, because you've been touting for a couple seasons now about Adley to getting to this team, and now it looks like a mainstay. How excited for you are? Do you think it will continue throughout the rest of the season? How are your feelings about that?
I'm excited. It sucks that it's Benacer that's been the one that had to make way because, it's really him and Adley that are my favorite players in this team, regardless of the ability of, Magnan and Teo Hernandez and Leao. They play similar roles to the position I played. They're far better with the ball at their feet than I ever tried to be. But no, it's nice. I think Pioli has a real set 11. We've played this past 11, I think, the past 3 or 4 games now. It's the usual suspects that are showing up on the score sheet, and it's kind of nice because there's a couple players that are still hurt that would be starting. I don't think any Milan fan thought that Gabbia and Kjaer was going to be a center back duo this season, considering Gabbia was loaned to Villarreal in the summertime and was had to be brought back kind of on an emergency deal because we just needed help in the back line and had no other fit center backs. So I'm pretty pleased with the Milan 11 and Adley's inclusion in it. But yeah, like I said, I just hope the form continues into the Europa League because it seems like that's our only trophy we're fighting for right now. So we'll see. I think we're in a good spot. But that's enough about my Milan. I think we can move. There's really only a couple other storylines I wanted to highlight. I don't know what Gianluca wants to touch on, but Bologna seemed to be back in form. They tied my Milan last week. It was a hard-fought game, and they put 4 this weekend past a struggling Sassuolo side who continue to just suck, really, for the lack of further analysis. There's really nothing to say about Sassuolo, but Bologna, on the other hand, were pretty good. They seem to be back to the form that they were in when they were in the top 4, although it's kind of drifting away from them. Did you catch that game?
I did catch the game. Yeah, like you said, Sassuolo have been dropping like a fucking rock down the table the last few weeks. I mean, they can't buy a win. They can't really buy a result to save their fucking lives right now. And it's pretty sad because Sassuolo is a team I kind of enjoy playing. I know they have one of our Azzurri stars in Berardi playing for them, but he's just really not really had much of a part to play in the team. He didn't even play this weekend, so I don't know. It's kind of sad just to see them kind of dwindling down there, fighting off relegation now at this point. They're right amongst it. I mean, from 15th down to the bottom is not separated by a lot, and they're right in there with the fight. And I wanted to shout out your old friend Salad Boy, Alexis Saladmakers. Got his first goal for Bologna this weekend. I think he hasn't really had too much of an impact for them or a role in this team, but when he comes in for Bologna, he definitely does things. He definitely provides a spark off the bench. So it's good for him to get a little bit of a contribution and to get his name on the score sheet.
Yeah, he's about as squad player of a footballer as you can find, in my opinion. He's a serviceable guy. You can stick him in a lot of positions, and he does all right. I actually kind of want to talk about Sassuolo because Sassuolo the past decade really was the club that Serie B clubs aspired to be. I mean, as soon as they came into the Serie A, they were challenging for Europe when they had De Zerbi at the helm. They've produced a ton of great talent. There's a bunch of Serie A players at top 6 teams that have Sassuolo roots. There's Pellegrini at Roma. There's Raspadori. Frattesi, who's made his way to Inter. Scamacca, who's back amongst the goals for
Raspadori as well.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't think they're going to go down. They have the quality to stay up, but yeah, they're dropping like a rock is a good way to put it. And the only other game I wanted to speak about really was the Atalanta-Lazio game. I know Napoli got a win against Verona. We can talk about it quickly. It was Cyril Ngonge who helped to take the points away from Verona. It was kind of sad. I didn't like to see that. I feel like every episode I say I'm kind of a closet Verona fan. Kvaradona scored a Maradona-esque goal. It was an unbelievable finish from range, so it was good to see them win. But really, the other big game in the Serie A was the Atalanta-Lazio clash. It was kind of a top 4 clash. I think if Lazio had any hopes of keeping their top 4 run alive, they would have had to win this game. They didn't. CDK scored a brace. He's been in unbelievable form. He's somebody who I think could have played a pretty good part in Milan's season, but it's good to see. I'm a fan of his. He had 2 assists last week. His 2 goals this week. It was a 3-1 win for Atalanta. They look like they're going to crack on and cement the 4th place finish, unless Gianluca's Roma has anything to say about it. What did you think of Roma's performance?
Yeah, I was thoroughly pleased with our performance. I think this was our best performance so far this season. We were absolutely fucking superb from minute 1. Pellegrini on the score sheet again. That's 3 goals in 3 games now under De Rossi. He looks like a completely new man since Mourinho's left the club. I'm not really sure why that is. I saw some weird shit this week that there was a rift between Mourinho and Pellegrini, and that when Mourinho got sacked, he left his winner's ring from the Conference League. He left it in Pellegrini's locker because he felt like he was betrayed by Pellegrini and by the rest of the players. So I thought that was kind of weird, but I think that they must have really actually had some fucking rift because Pellegrini looks back to his old self, like literally, like immediately, snap of a finger. He looks back to the player he was, providing ridiculous passes out of the midfield and really offering that trailing run that is so impactful for us. And I really have to say that the change in tactic has been fucking superb. Like, I'm thoroughly shocked. I really didn't think we had the personnel to be playing a back four, and De Rossi has proved me so wrong. It's not even funny. I want to shout out Angelino. He had his first start for us, and he was, oh my god, I was thoroughly impressed by him. His technical ability on the ball for a left back was incredible. I was shocked. I mean, there was a couple passes that he played and a couple runs he made up the field with the ball that I was just jaw dropped. I mean, he was everything Spinazzola could do, but better. And he could actually defend too, which was really a welcome sight. Karsdorp is another one who looks like a brand new man. We know he had his little issues with Mourinho. Obviously, he was taken out of the squad completely. But yeah, he looked great. Dean Huijsen got his first goal for Roma, which I kind of have mixed feelings about, and even I think the fans did too, because when he scored, like nobody cheered, nobody really yelled his name, which was just kind of odd in my opinion. And lastly, my son, Tommaso Baldanzi, came on for the last 15 or so minutes to make his debut, and he looked like he fit right in with the boys. I think he's going to go on to do some great things in this team, and I couldn't even begin to describe to you how excited I am to see what he can do for us, because I mean, what a player. He came into the game and he was stuck in from the first second he stepped out there. He was making tackles in defense. He was carrying the ball forward. He was winning fouls and bringing the team up the field. And it's just everything I wanted to see. And he has such a great mentor to learn from in Dybala ahead of him. So I'm just so excited. And yeah, overall, I couldn't ask for anything better. And other than that, I just want to say it was class as always. Every time Ranieri comes to the Olimpico, or every time we play against Ranieri, the fans always say thanks to him, and they show him a little bit of love because he is an icon for us, and he always loved the Tinker, man. So he's done great things with a lot of teams, and Roma was one of them. So it's always nice to see him get a little bit of recognition.
You know, you talked about Roma for about 5 minutes. I can't believe you mentioned Dybala's name once the whole time. He scored a brace. I thought that was
because I was so impressed with everybody else.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty good. But yeah, maybe I think that really speaks to how well Roma's playing. If I'm gonna drag my brother down to earth here, as I seem to do a lot in our 25 years on this earth, you played 18th, 19th, and 20th so far in this De Rossi tenure. 3 wins that I think
now I'm going to make the same counterpoint that I made to you.
Yeah, but let me finish. But I do agree, because Roma of the past definitely would probably have only won one of these games, drawn the other, and probably lost the third. The way that they're winning the games, I think, is the real difference between De Rossi's Roma and Jose's. At least Jose's towards the end. They play with their heads up, no matter if they concede or are up 4 goals. It's a welcoming sign to see. I hope they get smashed by Inter next week. That being said, so you stop with your rants every week about Roma, but we'll see.
Yeah, what I'm going to say about this is 2 things. First of all, we have a level of composure and assuredness that we didn't have in probably the last 6 months or so under Mourinho. And
yeah, I agree.
We probably don't get the result in every single one of these games in the last couple months. And I think that's all credit to what De Rossi's done. And one thing I want to say too is one thing I've really noticed as a difference in this team, I mean, we were up 3-0 in the second half with like 30 minutes to go, and we're still pushing for a goal, pushing to score, pushing to continue entertaining the fans, which is not something we have done at all under Mourinho. We score 1 goal and then sit back and defend, and it fucking sucks. It's horrible to watch. It makes me want to shut the game off because it's not entertaining at all. And I admire a lot of the other clubs. Like Liverpool is a perfect example of that. No matter what the fucking scoreline is, they're always going to fly forward and attack and try to at least entertain the fans. And De Rossi's certainly doing that so far. So I'm just really excited. I hope we get a fucking result against Inter because I would just love it. We might blow the title race open. We might get our asses kicked. Who knows? But I'm certainly looking forward to it either way.
You gonna make the Champions League? What do you think?
No.
No, I don't think so.
No?
If Italy gets the fifth Champions League spot from the way they divvy up for next year with the extra teams, that'll be our only chance. We got to finish fifth. We're not gonna. I don't think we're gonna crack top four personally.
I think it all hinges on Atalanta's play. Really, I'll try to be a little positive for Roma because I do like when Roma wins. I'll be honest. You are my brother, and I do want Roma to do good. But Atalanta have a game in hand. It's going to be really important. I think if they can take those 3 points, it'll be a 4-point gap. Obviously, 4 points is more than one. Right now, it really is within touching distance. But if Roma don't play European football, at this point, I'll be shocked. I know Napoli is still below them, but I think Roma should be finishing in the top 6 at least. If they finish outside of that, it's a disaster, and De Rossi doesn't have a prayer at keeping this job. So we'll see.
Yeah, I have to compliment.
That's pretty much it. Unless you guys have some questions for Serie A or for Roma.
Yeah, I wanted to compliment because obviously I wasn't overly convinced about De Rossi. Like just looking at his previous tenure at a club as a management.
CV doesn't say much.
Yeah, it was pretty poor. If you look at his record at Spal, it was 3 wins, 6 draws, and 8 losses. So it was pretty piss poor. I know they're going through a bit of financial issues and plummeting in terms of the ranks in Italy. But as far as I think you guys are right though when we originally talked about this appointment because I think just what he means to Roma being what was he there for a good 15 years or whatever
15
it was.
years, something like that. 500 games.
I mean, he bleeds. He bleeds Roma, and if anything was going to motivate the players there, and anything was going to motivate the fans, it was definitely him. So I think credit to those making decisions in the upper echelons of the Roma club because they made a good one. I think.
Actually, you make a good point there. You make a really good point there. I want to shout out the Friedkins because I think they've done a fantastic job since they've come in. They shocked me when they brought in Mourinho a couple years ago. They absolutely shocked me when they brought Dybala in, and I'm got to be honest, they kind of shocked me bringing De Rossi in. I didn't think they'd have the wherewithal and the knowledge and like the idea even to bring in somebody like that. I don't think we really associate American owners with doing that kind of thing, and it's just really nice that we have owners that are in touch with the club and actually like they're at every game. I can't ask for much more because the guy we had before, Pallotta, never fucking showed up. The only game he came to was when we beat Barcelona, and he went celebrated in the Trevi Fountain like a fucking jerk off after, and he got fined by the city. But it's just really, I have to say, I'm really thankful to the Friedkins because they've done a fantastic job. Supposedly, they're going to be proposing another stadium soon, which is another little off the field thing going on. We've been trying to do that for a long time now, push through a new stadium, Stadio della Roma. It's been unsuccessful probably for as long as I can remember. I mean, we've been trying to do this. And I think the Friedkins, if there's anybody who's going to be able to do it, their track record so far is they're going to be able to pull it off somehow. I mean, they pulled off Mourinho coming in and Dybala, so if there's anybody I back, it's certainly them.
It must be nice when you have American owners that value club icons. I wonder.
Honestly, unbelievable. Like I've never seen anything like it. The way they value the club, the way they treat the club and the fans, and even past players, it's great. I really couldn't ask for anything more.
Yeah, when he
I think it's always interesting when a big manager is fired. I think it's a common thing for teams to bring in a club legend just to like hold it over a little bit of like, well, we know this is gonna be shit, but like let's bring in a club legend who at least has a little bit of like pull with the fans, so the fans can get on board, and the fans can like they won't put a lot of blame on some random guy or some assistant coach. So I always think it's nice when they do that, and then additionally when it works out, it's like a double bonus. So
maybe Steven Gerrard will come fill in Klopp's shoes at Liverpool.
I was gonna say clip that and send it to Bowley. Damn, they need Terry.
Yeah, for real. But yeah, when he said American owners, Andrew, I was already looking at you because Maldini was setting up Milan for greatness. I don't know why they got rid of him. But if you guys are wrapped up with Italy, me and Jay will quickly touch on Portugal, which is a bit uneventful, but I will have a conversation about my club and their game in a little while. But quickly touching on a couple of score lines before I get into Jay's Benfica. Braga got another 3 points. Salazar getting another assist on the day. I have highlighted him week in, week out and how good he is. I think he'll get a move this summer to a big club, if not one of our big three in the country, to maybe a club in a bigger league. But another good performance from them. And then Porto drop points, tying Rio Ave, who played a man down for a little while. I think this right here, I know they had a couple of VAR goals disallowed, Jay, but this here says what we were saying. Porto are not fully up to the caliber. I know they're still in the Champions League. I know maybe they have a chance to get into the next round, but they just haven't been on it as far as league goes, and we've been saying that every week. And I think this sums it up because I just don't think Rio Ave is that good of a team. They're nearly on the verge of relegation. I don't know if you had any thoughts per se.
Yeah, I mean, I think last week we kind of said it looked like they kind of changed some things up, and it was on the up for them. But then this is a very unimpressive Rio Ave team that could likely go back down, and if they do, that would be awful for them financially, considering the situation they're in.
Right.
But yeah, that's not a game you want to drop points in, especially with the not really an opportunity, but with the Sporting's game being postponed, which we'll talk about in a bit. It gives you the illusion that you're closer in the table.
Right.
So if they win, they're technically 2 points behind Sporting for second place. Granted, they have a game at hand, but mentally that can kind of like psychologically help you out, thinking you're more in it. So yeah, that was definitely a missed opportunity for them. But hey, I'm not a complainer.
Right, I'm not going to complain either because they were on a 2-game win streak of like good performances too. It's a bit embarrassing, but we'll see how they progress. They do play Santa Clara in a cup match, which Santa Clara are pretty poor, so maybe they can get a little form. But I'll hand over the Benfica game just to say they won 3-0 against Gil Vicente. I did mention last week that I think Benfica love to concede first. They didn't concede this time, so they shut me up, got the shutout. But I'll hand it over to you. I know you're going to talk about your star boys, so I'll just give you the opportunity to do so.
Yeah, João Neves is unbelievable. I can't believe this kid. Anytime he plays is the best player on the pitch, and it's not even close. And I've never seen a kid kind of come in here and play the way he does. I mean, for people that don't watch him and only watch the Prem, he plays better than Kabi Mainu, and it's not even close. So he's been phenomenal. But
can I just intrude?
Yeah.
I just looked at his stats and I saw he had 20 matches played and 2 goals and assists. He's not an attacking player. He's a defensive player.
He's more of he's been playing more of in a holding mid role.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But what he does, he's just always moving the ball, always creative, always like winning any battle. Gives 120% at all times. And it's just not something you get from players that young. And he just gives everything all the time. And most of his goals come off corner kicks.
Yeah.
And he's the smallest player in the box and somehow ends up winning it.
Yeah, he's a workhorse. I actually, being an opposing fan, I actually implore you to catch maybe a Europa League game if you can, Isaac, to check him out because he is.
Yeah.
We're in the Europa League.
Yeah,
I'll
so while you're watching the games, absolutely. I mean, it'd be something to look out for because if Liverpool and Benfica do match up, he's the player I think you'd be Klopp
this kid's phenomenal.
Would be looking at. Yeah, he is a very good player. He's key for Benfica's success. I think you pull him out of that team.
You struggle.
Benfica would struggle more. Yeah, I would agree. Because
just
a lot of
add my
energy.
2 cents in. I've only seen João Neves play probably 2 or 3 times so far this season, but I've been thoroughly impressed every time. I mean, he's absolutely the metronome of this midfield. He does everything. He brings the team up the field. He comes back and defends.
Yep.
He really he has endless endeavor, and so it's really impressive for a kid that's so young to be setting that type of an example in that team.
Yeah.
And one thing I wanted to ask you about, Jay, talk to me about Arthur Cabral, because ever since you called this guy out, he is fucking bagging goals like it's his day job. So,
dude,
what is it? Is it Marcos Leonardo coming in and lighting a fire under his ass? Is he listening to you? What's going on here?
Yeah, apparently I got his ear. But no, I think it's a little bit of both, right? It's he's starting to get pressure, both from the fans for being awful for all the money we paid for him. He's one of the most expensive transfers in our history, and for him to come in and kind of play lazily and just like not look like he's into it was tough. And when he got his first goal, and everybody kind of was happy for him, give him his flowers, whatever. And then he kind of went into a lull again. And then Casper Tengsted comes in, and who's been at the club for over a year and has really done fuck all until the last few weeks before he got injured, where he kind of established himself as the number 9. Musa couldn't establish himself as the number 9, so he had the opportunity, and then he finally put together a good run of games. And I genuinely like that game against Braga where he was man of the match, like 2 goals and I think an assist. And he got a standing ovation from the crowd. And these are fans that he got into fights with that he was flicking them off leaving the stadium. And like it was big issues in the media. And now he goes and gets that appreciation from the fans, and it pretty much makes you want to work harder for him. So yeah, he's been really good. And I think they've been changing the way they play a little bit, and kind of involving him more in a build-up and all that, and hold up the ball and move it side to side. So I think they've tweaked their tactics a bit to kind of fit his play better, and he's keeping Marcos Leonardo on the bench.
I was just going to say, because from seeing him at Fiorentina last season, he's certainly the type of striker that thrives dropping in a little bit, picking up the ball, holding up for his other teammates. So, I mean, if they've figured that out now, and certainly it seems like he's found his place in this team. So I think he's definitely going to be one to look out for, especially in the knockout rounds of the Europa League.
Yeah, I think a lot of players in this team are coming into really good form at a great time, and we're getting a lot of players back from injury as well.
You guys are in the playoff, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, we are. But for me, the biggest takeaway was Alexander Bach coming back from this game, because you now have a real fullback in this team for the first time in probably 3 months. So Arsenis goes back into midfield. We finally dropped João Mario, and this attack is free-flowing and looks fantastic. Surprise, surprise. But that's going to be the key. And I think the next domino to fall is going to be Muratu coming out for this kid, Alvaro Carecas Fernandez, whatever that he actually wants to go by. I'm not sure, but he's the kid we signed from Man United on loan with an option to buy. The second he comes in, instantly, we look so much better on that left side. So there's a lot of positives to take from this. We got Neres coming back. Marcos Leonardo didn't score this time, but he's still on good form. And then we got all these young kids that we signed with Prestiani, Rollheiser. Like, we have options now. And I think it looks like Roger Schmidt's finally going to do a bit more rotation. I think Kokchu, I think he was on the bench. Yeah, he was on the bench, but didn't get in. He was an unused sub. So we finally got some rotation coming in. So hopefully we can kind of ride the form of 15 players rather than just a handful that start every game, and have a real cohesive, coherent team by the time you get into the Europa League, and hopefully we can make a good run.
Real quick, too, I just wanted to ask you, I mean, how much of a luxury is it to have a player like Arsenis in this team that what a Swiss Army knife of a player? I mean, I feel like every time I look at Benfica's lineup, he's playing a different position.
Yeah, we've talked about this a few times where he's basically played everything but center back and keeper. He's played every position on the field: false 9, striker, number 10, winger on either side, center mid. So he literally slots in everywhere.
Yeah. I just wanted to say that must be such a luxury to have a player like that in your team.
Yeah, especially considering our lack of depth at fullback. He's played right back for the last 2 months, and he's done a fantastic job. And you can slot him in anywhere, and he's gonna a little bit like João Neves, but not with the same tenacity. Where he's just gonna give you 100% effort and look fantastic doing it.
Yeah, I first off, I'd like to bring Jay down to earth a little bit. Arthur Cabral only has 3 goals, and so like he's still kind of in the league. Oh yeah, but he only scored once against Braga. No, once against Braga, and then once against Estrela da Madonna and Gil Vicente.
I just counted. He has 5 since December. In all counts.
Oh, in all counts.
Yeah, and they all came in December. He had nothing before that.
And literally, ever since Jay called him out, literally he did nothing until that point.
Yeah. I still think he's kind of ass, but it's good for you that your striker's actually scoring. But I will say, but speaking on Arsenis, I think Arsenis, besides João Neves, just because João Neves is a unit, And I think Sporting could do well with a player like that. I think Oshnes is the only player that I look at Benfica, and that's someone like I would want to take. You know what I mean? Because I'm pretty happy with my squad, but I think Oshnes and João Neves are the two players that, like, if I look at Benfica and I'm like, oh, can I steal a player? I would do that, just because, like you said, G, he is quite literally a Swiss Army knife, and especially in the two ways that Sporting and Benfica play, they're very different, but they have a lot of key positions that when there's someone not there, they struggle. The fact that he can play almost all of them is just unreal. It's like a coach's dream to have a player like him, because he'll play any position and still put up 7s and 8s in terms of performances.
You seem to never see a drop in his levels of commitment either.
No.
Right. Yeah. You won't get too many 10s out of him in terms of performances.
Right.
Like, he's gonna make a few mistakes. He's gonna look a little out of place, but you're guaranteed at minimum a 7, and he's pretty much giving you a 7 or 8 every game.
Yeah.
And you can rely on that.
Yeah.
Like, for other players, like even like Antonio Silva, young kid, really nice. He's gonna have a few stinkers. He's had a few games where he hasn't looked up to par. But like, same with Rafa. Some games he looks like the best player in the world. Some games he looks like he shouldn't have played more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
So it's like, he's so consistent, and he's been fantastic for them. And also quickly shout out Florentino Luis, who's been benched pretty much every game. Rarely played this season. Only been used as like a 20-minute sub. Started this game and a few games recently, and doesn't look out of place, and the offense still flows with him in there. And he's just fantastic defending too.
Yeah, he's a good pocket player to have. I personally think Neves and Kokshu are probably your better duo in the midfield.
I want to see the three of them. I really want to see the three of them. Put Rafa out wide.
Yeah.
You can't not play Arsenal.
I know. And then you can't not play Di Maria, especially when you bring him in for that reason. So it's a tough dilemma in terms of picking. But it's a good pocket player to have, because when you come up against a team, Gil Vicente isn't the team that I'm going to describe, but when you come up against a team that you're worried about losing battles in the midfield, maybe having to play a little bit more defensive if you're the quote-unquote underdog in that lineup, like say they meet a Liverpool in the Europa League, that's the kind of player that you want, because he's going to lock down, he's going to drop back in. Yeah,
all your attacker.
Right, he's going to drop in between Otamendi and Silva, be the first one to step and win the ball, and create that defensive pressure. So it's a good pocket player to have, even if he isn't starting every match for you. But it's definitely.
Let me throw a wrench in the works. It's about halfway through the season. Who's feeling the most confident in winning the league right now?
Me personally.
Ooh.
I'm gonna say.
You think so?
From the outside, I think with a player like Gyökeres in your team, how can you not discount Sporting?
It's tough.
I think that is such a game changer, such a difference maker. Someone that I really think Benfica lack. If there's anything that team lacks, it's someone like that.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, dude, he's a luxury. That's somebody. Right. Every single team in the world should be wanting him, bar maybe Man City because they have Holland. Right. That guy's phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I mean, for me personally, I almost think the lead that Sporting have might be working in their disadvantage. I think you guys would probably be better if you were the ones kind of trailing and having that one game at home, like, we beat you at home, we have the league. Right. Whereas, like, I think having the lead, being a bit more inexperienced, I think, in terms of title success, it may be a little bit of a hindrance. I think that underdog mentality fits you guys a little bit better. And I just think Benfica catching this form now, and they could go on a roll and just finish the year off fantastic.
You know, now you say that too with the experience thing. I'm looking at the schedule through the rest of the season for the Portuguese league, and I don't know. I'm sure it's going to change, and matches will get shuffled around and whatnot. But from the way it looks now, it seems like Sporting is going to be playing after Benfica most weekends, so the pressure is going to be on them most likely to respond, to answer. Especially if Benfica wins or drops points, and they can have something to take advantage of. I think it's going to heap a massive amount of pressure on Sporting. And like we said, there are really not a lot of players who are experienced in a title fight like that. So it'll be really interesting to see how they handle that, what their mentality is like. So I'm definitely intrigued to see how it goes.
I think the genuine answer to your question, though, Isaac, is honestly neither me and Jay are super comfortable with either team winning the league. I think it's going to be a race to the bitter end. Probably a race until the derby come.
Yeah, that decides the league. Yeah. That decides the league.
Yeah, for sure. That's coming.
Fun, though.
Yeah, no, it is. I think it's exciting. Oh yeah,
Because as a Liverpool fan, I'm certain City will already win the league, and we're on top of the league right now. So that's
It's
kind
so
of fun.
far behind you.
yeah,
Yeah, they play each other April 7th.
yeah.
But
April
Sporting
7th.
and
That's
game
gonna be a
in
good
April.
one.
Benfica and Porto will play each other before that. So
Yeah, we'll have to
Right.
get together to watch that game.
Yeah,
That'll
and
be
I
fun.
actually think it's going to be that derby, but then also how each team plays Porto. Because if say Benfica catch a bit of poor form or something, and then don't perform against Porto, that's going to put a lot of pressure on them. But then they might come and play really hard at Avalat. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this game pans out.
you know what, too? Actually, now that you say that,
Yeah.
something I wanted to say, because you guys have really made a good point about some of the other teams really performing above their standards
Yeah.
in the Portuguese league, and I wouldn't be shocked if one of those teams like a Braga or Vitória Guimarães throws
they
a
can
wrench
ruin
in the
this.
works.
Right, they could ruin
Absolutely.
it. For
They
either
could
club.
fuck everything up for you
sure,
guys.
For sure. Yeah.
Especially if we're playing at their stadiums. I mean, they travel well. They have the two biggest fan bases outside of the big three. So I mean, it's a tough match regardless. But I know we're going to Guimarães. That place is not an easy place to go.
No.
Like they have some of the most passionate fans. Passionate being a loose term because they might want to say some other things. But yeah, it's not necessarily easy. But yeah, the level that Sporting and Benfica are playing at
Yeah.
is
It's above and beyond.
leaps and bounds ahead of anybody else in the league.
Yeah, and I'm gonna knock on wood when I say this, but to mock Jay a bit, back in like August or so, I still got the screenshot. Jay was like, after the transfer window, he was like, "Oh, Benfica have an 85% chance to win the league, and they've been trailing the league all season." So I've been pretty content with that. I've been holding that in my pocket. I haven't said a word about it all season, but I'm knocking on wood. I just thought it was a good conversation to say that in right now since you asked the question. But Jay ate his words a bit.
Yeah.
Even if they win, I think you were crazy for saying that. But
Yeah, I definitely underestimated you guys.
I think
I'll give you that.
Gyökeres was an obscure signing that I knew he was
Yeah,
good.
I don't think
saw
anybody
how-
would have seen him doing
How
this.
well.
I think we all.
Good from the championship coming up and being the best
saw
player
him
in
play
the league.
a couple times for Coventry and like the playoffs and stuff at the end of last season. You could see there was
He was
talent
good.
there, but I don't think anybody saw him going and doing this.
Yeah, I just think you know what it is because I think because everybody hypes up the Premiership, but I don't forget that the clubs that go into the Premiership are from the Championship. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's not
There's certainly
a
quality
shit house league. There is quality. There's teams that go in there. It's a physical league too. If you guys ever catch games randomly on the weekend, like they like fight for those games, and a lot of the referees let it play. That's why he's so strong. So I think players from there don't get the credit they deserve, and then they show up in the Premier League and they do well. But yeah, I think it's going to be a tight fight race. And if Jay is all set with Benfica, I don't have a game to actually talk about, but there's a conversation to be had. So Sporting and Famalicão for.
Oh, I wanted to ask about this.
Yeah, so their game got
Some government
postponed.
shit, right? Political issues.
Yeah, so there was no police at the stadium and like to monitor the game, right? So then that gave free reign, which is what I want to talk about, to the ultras to just start fighting and rioting in the streets, and it's just. And I get it, crowd mentality, you know, so all of a sudden there's no rules because there's no one to enforce them, and now everybody goes crazy. But I just think, especially the big three, and I know Jay was just mentioning Vitória Guimarães, dude, the ultras in our country are embarrassing, honestly. It's like Benfica has been going through it this season where they're getting fines like every other game because the ultras throw flares on the field on some stupid shit when they score a goal, or Porto's ultras kill each other, like stab each other in the stadium or in the streets. Sporting fans are just a bunch of hooligans too. And it's just embarrassing, dude, because, like, you know, like, when it comes to playing football on the pitch, like, our clubs are doing great stuff. We're producing talent. We're making millions upon millions of dollars of sales and stuff like that. But then we have the ultras who are representing our club in the stands, embarrassing us. You know what I mean? And it's just, I look at it and it's just gross, but...
Can I ask was there a reason besides like there's not being police there? I mean, like they're only playing Famalicão, and like I'm not really familiar with the Portuguese, but I think that game doesn't really have much importance, does it?
No, it's they have a minimum requirement for security for the game because I mean you can't just if you have no security at the game like people start running in and all that crap. But it was something about protesting wages because half the police got raises and the other ones didn't, so they had like a sick out. They all called in sick, so all that crap. So then they ended up taking like what they had from Famalicão to repurpose towards the Porto games. That they had one game that happened, so
Right. It's just, yeah, it's a bit embarrassing. I mean, that just goes on to like this political conversation about Portugal and why there's no money. But I mean, it reflects on the league, because there's, like you guys were saying with the Serie A, clubs win leagues here, and it really means nothing. Not that it means nothing, but like it means everything for the fans. But in terms of like money and value for the club, the only money that they're happy to get is the Champions League money, and you get that in second and third place, potentially. And it's just like there's not, like, winning the league means next to nothing besides for the passion wise, but financially, it provides no support because Portugal is just such a poor country right now. But yeah, I know Jay had mentioned before the pod that like there's in social media, Portuguese football social media, there's like conversations about how like this is fucked up because now Sporting are always trailing a game, so then they're the ones catching up to the league because hypothetically they have 3 points, they'd be the ones first, but now Benfica's technically sitting in first right now, and I don't buy into all that. I think that doesn't matter. I think maybe there's a conversation of a hypothetical where now Sporting lose form because they don't play a weekend and now they're like out of shape or whatever. I don't know. That's maybe something I end up talking about again at the end of the league if we don't win it. But you guys can call me out on it. But I just don't see it actually being anything that's super substantial. Just besides how embarrassing it is to have ultras that represent our fan base and them just being crap.
Yep.
And then we had a couple highlights in other leagues. I know we had the Madrid derby, which was a bit underwhelming, if I remember.
Another big game that did not live up to the hype.
Yeah, we had a lot of expectations for this weekend. I know we talked about it at the very, very end of our last week's, but just didn't live up, really.
Yeah, this game sucked in my opinion.
In the last month.
I think this is the third or fourth time, and this was definitely the shittiest game of them all.
Yeah.
I think they're like sick of each other at this point. But I want to shout out Brahim Diaz. I think he's been fucking on fire lately for Real Madrid. He's really stepped in the last couple weeks. Because I think Vinicius and Rodrigo have both been struggling with little knocks here and there. But every time I see Brahim come into this team, I mean, he's been so impressive. Angelo and myself have seen a lot of him, obviously, being at Milan for the last couple of years. So we certainly know exactly what type of player he is. But, I mean, what a fucking wizard this kid is with the ball sometimes. I mean, he has it on a string. You just cannot take the ball from him. And he's just a joy to watch. And it's nice that he's back at Madrid, and he's kind of making a name for himself under Ancelotti. I certainly questioned it when he went back and stayed. I was kind of shocked. I thought he would have made his move permanent in Milan, considering his status within the club. But it's good that he's there and he's making an impact. And he scored a good goal. And like I said, he was brilliant throughout the whole game. I thought he was the best player on the pitch.
Yeah. So am I wrong to think that he's kind of filling the role that Isco played early in his Madrid career, where he's kind of coming off the bench and then
100%.
kind of dictating when he comes in? Do you think that he could have that same impact and kind of establish himself in that team?
He certainly has the technical ability and the quality and the knowledge of the game to certainly impact games, and I think we're seeing that now. He's getting on the score sheet. He's making an impact. He's finding an assist. He's finding that pass that sometimes it seems like, even if it's not the pass, it seems like he has that ability where if he gets the ball from Modric or from Tchouaméni or Kroos in the midfield, he will take that ball and carry it 60 fucking yards by himself. He'll carry defenders with him. He'll ride challenges, and he'll just drag. If Bellingham isn't the one to do it because he has all the attention on him, Brahim has the space now to get that job done.
Yeah, and I think it speaks a lot to the desire that Brahim Diaz plays with. This is a player who was recently playing in a sling for Real Madrid. He loves every club that he's a part of. He quite literally wears his heart on his sleeve sometimes. I was particularly impressed with Real Madrid. It was a makeshift back four, kind of a makeshift front three. It was Jude playing this kind of weird false nine that, of course, he's definitely displayed the finishing ability to play in that type of area. But I think Atletico Madrid kind of let one slip here. I thought on paper that Atletico was going to go on to win this edition of the Madrid derby as well, but I thought they had some underwhelming performances from key players, and I think Real Madrid kind of snatched a point quite luckily, in my opinion. I know Diaz scored a good goal, but this definitely wasn't the best Real Madrid team that we've seen fielded this season, so that was really the only thing that jumped off the page to me that I wanted to say. But yeah, I mean, it was just another kind of boring, big clash.
And the
Which
major
is
implication
unfortunate.
from it is that it really opens up the match next week because Girona goes to the Bernabeu next week.
That's right.
Obviously,
Yeah.
it's 1 and 2, but Girona, since they've dropped points the last couple of weeks, but they're still only 2 points off now. So
Yeah.
it's going to be really, really interesting
Yeah.
to see what happens next week when they go there.
Yeah, I think we expected Girona to struggle a bit against a pretty solid Sociedad team. So, yeah, it's going to be. Hopefully, this one lives up to the hype because the last few big games we've been looking forward to have been pretty terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I think the only other thing to kind of highlight in La Liga, I'm not sure if anyone else wanted to bring anything up, but Barcelona got a win. I know we've been kind of critical of them, shaky form. They strung 2 back-to-back wins together. They had a goal off the bench from Vitor Roque. He scored his first goal and then got his first red card too. So not the best.
I want to say, actually,
9 minutes. 9 minutes.
I really felt bad for him about the 2 yellows he got. I didn't think either of them were worthy of yellow cards. Certainly not the second one. So for him to go off like that. The only other thing I will say about it, though, I thought it was pretty fucking asinine, really, of Xavi to go on the record and be like, "Oh, I wish the referees would give us a chance." Like, motherfucker, you are Barcelona. You are in this position because you guys play bad, not because of the referees' decisions.
Well, that's because he used to get.
And not for nothing, you're saying that at like one of the smallest teams in the league, probably a team who feels, and certainly their fans feel aggrieved by the referees' decisions at times when they play a team like Barcelona or Atletico or Real. So I just thought it was really fucking, I don't know, just stupid of Xavi really to even come out and say something like that.
A bit embarrassing, honestly, I think, from him.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of where they're at. Also, I thought that kid Moradon for Alaves, dude, this kid's a fucking specimen. He's owned by Atletico Madrid. He plays striker, but he is massive, dude. I did a little bit of research on him after the game because I was just thoroughly impressed with his performance. And I saw a picture of him standing next to Rudiger when they played Real Madrid, and dude, he fucking dwarfs that guy. Like, he is massive. He's only like 17, 18 years old, but he seems like he could be quite the player.
Yeah, and then moving quickly to the Bundesliga, where we had, why can't I find the game? Bayern another 3 points. Leverkusen also get 3 points, so that title race is still alive and healthy.
Yeah, of course they play each other next week as well too. Another massive game.
Yeah, so hopefully let's not try to overhype it too much, so we actually can have something to be excited about after the game is over. But no, seriously, that's another game we talk about. Real Madrid and Girona playing against each other. That'll set up the league for a fun finish. That's another game that has huge implications. So hopefully they live up to the hype, and then we'll get to see something interesting happen. And then to wrap up our little episode here, we do have the AFCON, which as time of recording, the semis start playing tomorrow, if I'm not crazy.
Yep.
So we did just wrap up with the quarterfinals.
Both games are tomorrow.
But yeah, both games are tomorrow, so that by the time we record, I think the final will already have been played too, the next episode.
Yeah, it's the finals this weekend.
Yep, so that'll be something to talk about. But talk about now, actually, the quarterfinals, where both my nations that I was hoping to make the semis did not make it through. Cape Verde losing in penalties to South Africa, and Nigeria beating Angola. And then, of course, Ange's dark horse, Mali, losing to Ivory Coast. And then the Dominican Republic of the Congo, which Ange highlighted as being a team that would be interesting to make into the final and still now have a chance, did beat Guinea 3-1. Takes on any of these games? Before I keep going.
The Ivory Coast game was nuts.
Yeah.
Absolutely fucking superb, that game. I have to say, though, what a turnaround from this Ivory Coast side. I mean, they were down and out in the group stage. They were down and out in the last round. They were down and out in this game, and they're still here somehow by some grace of God. I don't know how or why, but this Ivory Coast team just keeps kicking. And I think they got every reason to be in the final after the semifinals tomorrow. Yeah, I thought it was really, it just really showed such a great example of like desire and confidence from a host nation to come back and score such late goals. And the scenes, like, what a fucking atmosphere and a reaction from the fans after they scored the late goal to win. A great little back heel finish too from Diakite. Wonderful little improvisation in the moment, really, to do that in the last second like that, right before penalty kicks. So I thought it was just a great win overall for Ivory Coast.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, there's a lot of scrap. I mean, 8-9 cards in this game. Ivory Coast managing to play a man down, then taking the deficit on the scoreboard, and coming back is just insane. I think like going a man down and a goal down is unreal to make that comeback. And also Adama Traore missing the penalty from Mali, which would have been obviously set up their nation for most likely a semifinal if they had made through.
Yeah, I was a little sad, to be honest. It was there for Mali to get the job done. It was an Ivory Coast who, like we said, have kind of been on the ropes in all their games that they played. But yeah, they pulled it out of the fire. I think they're going to have a tough test with DR Congo. I know that was kind of another team that I had talked about last episode. They got some sneaky players. So I wouldn't be too surprised if they make it to the final. But if I had to pick a winner now, I'm going to back Ivory Coast only because if Nigeria win, I'll look like an idiot saying that they had no chance. The first episode we talked about the AFCON, so I'd like to see the Elephants get it done.
Yeah, for me, the pick of the semifinal games is definitely the Ivory Coast Congo game. I think that'll be the most fun to watch. But I think if you're Nigeria, you have to capitalize on this because all the big boys are out. Yeah. You've been the favorite for the last 8 tournaments and done nothing. Yeah. So I think they need to go improve themselves and take advantage of the situation they're in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'd love to back Ivory Coast. I think they should be the favorites, but I mean, they've given you zero confidence. There's zero reason to have any faith in them, other than the fact that they're pulling it out of their ass. So I mean, I think it could go either way. But my guess is probably going to be a Nigeria-Ivory Coast final, and I think Nigeria wins it.
Yeah, and you know what? And if that final, Ivory Coast and Nigeria, like you said, Jay, both of those teams started this tournament at least how we felt pretty poorly, and we just didn't think that they would do any of it, and now they've proved us wrong. And obviously Nigeria getting a pretty favorable draw in the semis as South Africa have just been having a dream run, knocking out
South Africa haven't conceded yet in this tournament.
And it's unbelievable. They've knocked out.
They haven't conceded a goal at all.
Yeah, and credit to their keeper who
four
was
penalty
insane.
Saves and not 4 easy saves either, bro. He was flying across that fucking goal. Yeah. So big ups to him.
Yeah, because that Cape Verde game, those penalties were insane. He played out of his mind, and then obviously knock out Morocco, who were one of the favorites of this tournament too, and on paper one of the probably the most talented.
And
sides.
Actually, their goalie before they even went to extra time, he made an unbelievable save in stoppage time to even keep it level. So I think all credit has to go to him for South Africa for even getting into this point.
Yeah,
I'd love to see Ivory Coast win it in the way that they've been winning games.
Yeah,
that would be absolutely as somebody with no skin in the game, I think
94th minute winner.
Yeah, I'm just most excited to watch that team just because of the utter chaos that happens in their games. So I'm rooting for them.
I think we're gonna see an entertaining final regardless of what teams win the semifinal. I think the game is gonna be great no matter what the matchup is.
Yeah, I think exactly. I think you hit it, G, because you could create a number of different finals from these 4 teams, and I think it's always going to be a fantastic game. And I think as a neutral, you're satisfied with any winner from these 4.
Yeah,
I think they've all deserved.
I agree. I got it. I want to say too. I think this might be the best AFCON tournament I've seen in my lifetime, dude. This has been wild. The upsets, the turnarounds, the results, the drama. It's just been fucking superb from start to finish. Every game has me on the edge of my seat. It's been awesome. It's been so good.
Yeah, it has been really good. And I mean, what you said, I think the Salah Mane duking it out for the AFCON was really dope too. But
that final.
But I think overall this tournament as a whole has just been fucking superb from start to finish.
I agree. Awesome. So we'll be tuning back in with the results of that tournament. Can't wait. Super excited for this weekend. To wrap us up, we are going to hit our 5-a-side. So as always, if you don't know, we're going to do 5-a-sides of the best players this weekend. A goalkeeper, a defender, midfielder, forward, and then a flex player that can be anywhere from the defense, midfield, or forward position. And then as always, our goalkeeper expert G will give us his pick for a goalkeeper, but I think we just mentioned who it might be.
Ronwen Williams of South Africa obviously has to be. Has to
Yeah.
be the pick. The only other goalkeeper I did want to shout out was Michele Di Gregorio of Monza, who we've talked about briefly in the past as being one of the shining lights in the goalkeeping game in Italy. He played absolutely unbelievable for Monza again this weekend. He had 6 unreal saves, and he's really the reason, in my opinion, that Monza are even where they are on the table. I think if they didn't have him, they would be right amongst it in the relegation scrap. But yeah, it's got to go to Ronwen Williams of South Africa for me. He's an easy slot in for the goalkeeper position.
Yeah,
I'd agree with that.
I have no objections. That penalty shootout was insane, and he
Yeah.
put everything on display.
Yeah.
Ange, you have anybody to shout out for defense?
Yeah, I have a couple of shouts. To be honest, there wasn't really too many defenders that like really jumped off the page to me. I thought
Van
Trippier
Dijk, what are you talking
had a
about?
what? Who? What's
Van
that?
Dijk, obviously. What are you talking about?
Oh yeah, I know, Gabrielle. I thought Trippier had a really good performance for Newcastle. I think it was a captain's contribution, goal and assist. But I'm actually gonna go with a Nerazzurri player. Gross. I thought Benjamin Pavard was Inter's best player. To be honest, he was really solid. He's somebody that hasn't gotten too many minutes, but he matched Vlahovic for stride on every attack. I think he was the reason why
His
Juventus.
range of passing in that game was pretty impressive to me. Something
Yeah,
I wasn't really expecting to see from him.
Yeah, I thought he had a really, to be honest, standout performance. Not really the Inter player that I thought I would have picked in a 5-a-side going into this weekend, but to be honest, he impressed me a lot. So that's who I have for our defender spot.
Yeah, I'm not mad with that. I kind of like that. I do for midfield. I do have a shout from another Inter player. I think Çalhanoğlu, we talked about, had a really good performance. It doesn't get on the score sheet, which why I also I want to shout out Pellegrini. He did get a goal and assist this weekend, so I don't think that's a terrible shout. I don't know if anybody else has a name out there. And also for me, it depends. Well, so that was my actually I was just about to say, because Cunha and Foden, I guess you can classify as midfielders, but also play really far forward. So I didn't know.
I would
obviously
classify Foden more as a midfielder than Cunha. Honestly, I think Cunha's more of a second striker.
Because if we want to talk Foden as a midfielder, then I think it has to go with him. He gets the hat trick. But if we don't call him a forward, then I think it has to go with one of our 2 Serie A players. But if you guys want to help me make that decision.
Well, Foden could always make.
Foden is definitely a midfielder. So I would put him
in the midfielder category.
Yeah,
And I think my pick is easy for Foden, unless there's any objections to that pick.
Yeah, I think I'm with that.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want too many Inter players in there anyway. I'm fine with Foden in midfield striker. I know we already said his name. I think it has to be Mateus Cunha.
Yeah.
Kind of interesting that like we're not going to pick any of the players from the Madrid derby or Arsenal Liverpool, but
I
There
think it was a
is
standout.
one player I would like to shout out. I think he made our team. Did Dennis Undav make our team last week? He had a hat trick last week. He had 2 goals or an assistant, goal and 2 assists this weekend. So he kind of starred again for Stuttgart. Another big result for them too. So he's probably. I mean, obviously he's not going to make the team because of Cunha, but I think he deserves a little bit of love at least.
Yeah, we
I
did
also
get him
saw
on
that,
shots 2 good weeks in a row.
I saw De Zerbi said that he was a little regretful to let him go out on loan. He's someone that he wished he had at Brighton right now. So kind of interesting that someone that De Zerbi rates that highly was allowed to leave.
well, he was awful for Brighton, but he's not going to get in our team. I think I'm fine with our flex player being either Çalhanoğlu or somebody I wanted to shout for forward that, like I said, is not going to get it because of Cunha. I actually kind of want to put Rasmus Højlund in the squad. I think he's been particularly impressive in United's team. He's finally doing what the number 9 should do for Manchester United. So I would say either him or Hakan for the flex position.
Yeah, I don't mind giving our guest of honor, Isaac, the option to pick a player. I know asking a Liverpool fan to pick between a Man United player and another player to be our flex is probably a little biased.
Yeah, he wants Martinelli in the team.
But yeah, I think Højlund as a good shout because being one of the only clubs that played a doubleheader this weekend, and he performed superbly in both. Is just a shout for being consistent over 2 games in the weekend where a lot of times we highlight players who just had 1 good game. But Isaac, I will give you the honors to pick between Çalhanoğlu or Højlund for our flex this weekend.
I feel like it's. I feel like I mean, if you want to do
Can't
stats,
pick
it's
you
Hoyland.
can't
But if
pick a
you want to
United
do
player.
if you want to do stats, it's Hoyland. But if it was one big game and a game that means a lot, it is Çalhanoğlu. So
Yeah, that's
Uh,
fair.
I think Çalhanoğlu's overall impact in the game too.
Yeah.
I think if you take him out of that team, Inter probably lose the game. I think Juventus would win the midfield battle. So I think his overall integralness to Inter's win and where they've been at this season, I think he definitely earns the spot this week.
That's
I'll
fair.
give
Yeah.
it to him.
Yeah, I have to agree. So yeah, nice. Fantastic. It's been another banger episode. I know we were expecting more from our games, but it's always an interesting conversation on why teams don't perform what we expect them to be. But hopefully, knock on wood, we have another big game, a lot of title race contending matches coming up this weekend. So we will be catching you also with the AFCON results. That's going to be super exciting to talk about and finish up with. So as always, have a great week and keep on being Son of a Pitch.